Thank you for joining us on our journey here to preserve the history of mixed martial arts. When I wanted to take on this project, I needed help. I brought in one of my favorite matchmakers, Miguel Iturrate, and the MMA detective, Mike Davis. So to do this, we've been able to preserve history. Welcome and enjoy.
Hey, welcome back, Lights Out podcast fans. I'm Miguel Iturrate, and I've got the MMA detective, Mike Davis, with me. And I promise we are going to deliver the big guy, Chris Lytle, today for this deep dive because we're going old school. Mike, what do we got?
We got Enson Inoue. We got a gentleman. Okay, everybody talks about the Yakuza, the Mafia, the Russian mob, whatever. Every little country's kind of our own little group. Enson Inoue is kind of like the guy that went on a vacation somewhere, brushed elbows with some of these people, and then decided that he'd also like to fight them. Just why not? And he's an absolute legend in the sport. He is a treasure. And we haven't done the interview yet, but I'm going to tell you this. He is going to say things that is for sure going to get himself in trouble. I mean, for sure.
He has a way of dodging trouble. He's
not afraid of it.
Comfortable. Yeah, he's comfortable. He's comfortable in some of those worlds too, and he's established himself. So I trust Enson. And the fact is that this is a challenge because, when we respect Enson, Enson has his own podcast. He's done interviews before. He's been, out there, and he has a little bit of a social media presence and stuff. So we got to get some stuff out of him that isn't out there, or at least compile a bunch of stuff together. And I think we got an ace in the hole there because we could go long on the Abu Dhabi stuff where I met him there the first time. And I don't think that, that's a subject that he frequently touches on. So let's see what we get.
Yeah, for sure. So ladies and gentlemen, April 16th, I'm in Tampa, Florida for Abu Dhabi Jiu-Jitsu Pro. If you're a grappler, you like Jiu-Jitsu, please sign up on Smooth Comp. April 8th, I'm in Chicago for Ignite FC. I'm doing color commentary for them, kind of hosting the event at 115 Bourbon Street on the south side of Chicago. Please come out and see us and like, share, subscribe. I mean, we can't do this without you. It's literally a virtual tip. Rather than give us money, give us a like, share, subscribe, and we're greatly appreciative of that.
And here we go, Enson Inoue.
Okay, what's happening, everybody? Thank you once again. Another fantastic episode, deep dive time. That's what we love to do, get in deep with some fantastic fighters. I love this right now, old school guys like myself. Even better, we have a great fighter, interesting stories. I can't wait to watch this. One of the old school OGs, Enson Inoue. How you doing, brother?
Good, man. Good. All the way from Japan.
All right, man. I got to tell you, man, as somebody, when I first started fighting, it was my ultimate goal just to make it to Japan. And I got so fortunate back in 1999, I started going over and fighting in Pancrase and was able to stay in the Yokohama dojo and train there. And man, that's where I really learned a lot about fighting and really learned what it was all about. Just love the style there. I still, even now, I like the Japanese style more than the American. I like the pride rules. I like the Pancrase. It was about coming, showing your warrior spirit and fighting. That's all it was about. You win some, you lose some. People there had some not great records because you fought nothing but the best in the world. And if you came and fought, they loved you and brought you back. I loved it. It's all about winning and losing too much, I think, in America. I just really appreciate the Japanese style better.
Yeah, I feel the same way, man.
Yeah. So real quick, obviously Mike Miguel, I'll let them get to it in a second, but I always like to ask a little bit about your background as far as like, what did you do growing up? Did you play football? Did you wrestle? How did you become a combative athlete? What did you do growing up?
When I was little, when I was in elementary school, I used to play baseball, basketball. Went to high school and continued baseball, basketball, did some volleyball because my mom didn't want me to play football because it was too dangerous. So I on the same season as football, they had volleyball. So I figured I may as well keep busy. So I went and did some volleyball. After high school, I got more serious into, I was trying to get into a college team in baseball. Baseball was my actual dream, my dream sport.
Wow.
Yeah. And basketball, I wasn't big enough. I wasn't good enough. And my other sport was racquetball. So we did that. Me and my brother did that on the side. And so my two main sports after high school was baseball and racquetball.
And how did that transition? Go ahead, Miguel. Go ahead, Miguel.
I'm sorry, Chris. I just want to ask because you're associated with Japan and Hawaii. Where was you growing? Did you grow up in Hawaii or?
I grew up in Hawaii.
Describe that to us.
I was born and raised in Hawaii. And my blood is Japanese, but I'm a Japanese American. So my great grandparents are actually from Japan.
Okay. So you're second generation in this country.
Fourth generation in this country, yeah.
Okay. Gotcha. Cool.
And you kept the language up.
No.
So you when you go to Japan, like they can tell when you speak, like if they don't know you that you're Japanese, is not native. Okay.
Yeah, my like any Japanese person that lives in America and speaks English, you still can, from the accent and just from the little intonations, you can tell that they're not a native English speaker. Same with me, because the fourth generation already pretty much is very Americanized, and they don't really have the language down. So the language,
you speak it fluently.
Is more English than anything.
Okay.
Did you go back and forth a lot?
No, not until I was 24 when I was invited to play in a racquetball tournament in Japan. Actually 23 was the first time I came to Japan. So I until then I was just born and raised in Hawaii.
Okay. So
that's cool.
How did that transition come to, like, you're playing racquetball? How did you just like get in a fight with some of the racquetball court? Is that kind of like this? How did that transition to fighting?
Well, first it was a baseball, and then when it got to the college level, I just felt that the coaches had too much control, because when I tried out tried out for the University of Hawaii, and I felt that I didn't get a fair shake because they already had recruits that came in. And I think because they already flew the guys in, they gave those guys a better look. And, I got cut on the last cuts in the University of Hawaii on my freshman year. So I kind of was frustrated with that. And I was actually equally playing racquetball pretty seriously. And my brother Egan actually stopped playing baseball in high school and just concentrated on racquetball. And he became like one of the top pros. So with his lead, I felt, man, maybe that's something I want to do. And I decided to, pursue racquetball instead. While I was in racquetball in Japan, I was up there. I became the 4-time Japan champ. And I don't know, I just had this, I always had this desire to go into the ring and test myself in the ring, test myself as a man. I didn't think I was going to be any good or bad. I just thought that hand-to-hand combat was probably the most anxiety that I'll be feeling in any type of sport. And for me to be a better and stronger person, I just felt that I wanted to get into that ring and, try it out.
So more for like almost personal growth and everything, is almost just like conquering fears and stuff like that.
Exactly. Yeah, it wasn't about back in my day, it wasn't really a legit sport. It was banned in half the state. The rule, they didn't have the rules. There wasn't really a weight class. It was all over the place. So, for me, it wasn't about fame, fortune, making a living. It was about, testing myself and building my strength as a man.
So Chris, we had talked about, like, you're obviously, you said fourth generation. You speak, Japanese, but you said that it's kind of with an accent, like you struggle a little bit with it.
Yeah.
But when you go to Japan with mixed martial arts, you immerse yourself into the culture in such a way to where you're almost become like one of the nation's heroes there.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing is when I first got here, I faced a lot of prejudice because I wasn't Japanese. I was considered a foreigner, and there was all these restrictions on foreigners. You can't stay here, you can't own a house, you can't buy a car. There's a lot of restrictions. Hats off to the Japanese government. They protect the Japanese people. Not like Hawaii. Hawaii, the Japanese and the Arabs can come in and buy houses. And now the cost of houses in Hawaii is so high that when people graduate from college in Hawaii, they can't even live in Hawaii because they can't afford it. Slowly, the country and the people grew on me.
All right.
So when you first went there, would you have been considered a gaijin?
Yes.
Wow.
Even today, I'm still considered a gaijin, but it's kind of like, you know, a lot of the fans consider me one of their own. You know, they name me Yamato Damashi. You know, so in a way, I'm kind of lucky that they took me in like that. But yeah, as a whole in the country, I still need to get a visa. You know, there's all these restrictions on me. It's the same as you if you were here and you were living here for 30 plus years. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, Enson, you say you're lucky that they kind of took you in as one of their own. I've watched your career. I'm not sure they really had a choice. You know, like you kind of moved in and said, if you can kick me out of this house, go ahead. But I don't think anyone here can do it. I mean, that's kind of how I look at your career. And like one instance that I can point out is Tiger Mask. Satoru Sayama had a gym and you took it over and it eventually became Purebred.
Yes.
So how does that transition take place?
Sayama Satoru, he actually gave me that chance to get into the ring. He saw something in me, and you know, him and me had two different visions at the beginning, because I was thinking one fight just to get that experience in the ring, and he was thinking like, wow, I'm going to change the rules so this guy can show his strengths, you know. So because I came in, they changed the rules from the general shoot fighting. They call it freestyle shoot fighting. You know, Pancrase was the only one that was the closest to the MMA we see today. You know, they had open palm strikings. So Sayama was the first one who actually created where it was a closed fist on the ground and, you know, chokes and punches, you know. So he had a vision of me being, you know, becoming a star. Remember, there was this funny story when me and him were going to eat some yakiniku. We're crossing the street and I saw a carved kid down. They screamed his name, Sayama Satoru. They screamed, "Gambate!" You know, they told him like, "Do your best." And I'm like, "Holy shit!" I said, "You know those guys?" He goes, "No, they're just fans." I'm like, "Fans? You mean just guys out of the blue just screaming your name?" He's like, "Enson, don't worry. One day it'll be like that for you." And I remember thinking like, no fucking way, man. That would be crazy if that ever happens. And, you know, it happens today. So it's kind of funny how that change took over, you know? So, yeah. So Sayama was the one who actually gave me the chance to get into the ring. And he had problems with the big sponsor. The top guys that funded Shooto, funded the gym. There was some kind of financial problems where, I don't know if the real story is, but what I heard was that he was spending too much money to a point where their bank wasn't going to loan them any more money, because they had pachinko parlors, they had a catering service, they had a funeral home, and the gym was the smallest entity, but it was actually taking most of the money. So the banks are saying, you know, we're not going to lend you guys money if that's the case. And, you know, I think Sayama just was enjoying the nightlife and the hostess clubs. So, you know, it got taken away, and the owner of the gym was going to close it down. And so me and the other shoot fighters didn't have anywhere to go. And he actually called a big meeting when all the shoot fighters had Kawaguchi, had Nakai, had Asahi, had Lumino was still a green boy. So Lumino wasn't really in on that. But all the top guys, he offered them to take over the gym. And nobody wanted to. So I'm the only one that raised my hand and said, you know what, I'll give it a shot. Instead of, you know, losing the gym, I'll give it a shot. And that's how the transition took place.
So, awesome. Chris, just to kind of put it in proper context, Kid Yamamoto, who obviously, you know, holds a giant place in your heart, Takuya Kuwabara, Tetsui Kato, Makoto Ishikawa, and Isao Akeita. All of those guys came from that gym. All of them studs in the Japanese circuit. Miguel, we can't hear you, buddy.
That's right.
So
it's
all good. I was actually asking for something. So, Enson, so obviously you got in first with Shooto. You mentioned, you know, some Shooto royalty there and stuff like that. But did they put you through the ringer, or were you following in Egan's steps? Like how? Like I saw at some point when he competed, he started with like Lumax Cup, and you started with Shooto. Like why did you never start in Lumax Cup? Why did he never do Shooto? Were you involved in politics from the very beginning?
Well, I was the one who started off in Shooto. Egan hadn't fought in Japan yet, and he entered the Lumex Cup, he didn't really care for the rules. He liked the gi, he liked jiu-jitsu, and he figured, oh, okay, jiu-jitsu with a little bit of striking. So that's why he decided to try it, and he was invited to it, and we thought that he would probably do really good in it. So he decided to do that. But yeah, he doesn't enjoy fighting like I did. He didn't like it. He felt it was a way to make a living. That's all. That's the reason why he fought.
Who was your original jiu-jitsu instructor?
Helson Gracie.
I have a question for you. When I first started coming over to Japan, I was fortunate enough to start fighting in the Pancrase organization. I didn't really understand. I knew a little bit as I got there and understood it was kind of a rift. It was like two rival organizations. Can you describe that at all, and how like Shooto, Pancrase was like you couldn't do both? People always like, why are you fighting both? That wasn't an option. You were one or the other.
Yeah, there was a lot of politics in that where, Shooto was Shooto and Pancrase was Pancrase, and the top guys, the head guys didn't like each other. It was between Sayama and Ozaki, so they didn't like each other. And most of us, just saw Pancrase as like a competitor. That we're better than Pancrase, but equally they had great fighters. We had good fighters. It wasn't really. It's kind of sad that it was like that. If we worked together, it'd be better because, even knowing that had a big rift, I actually went and Manabu.
Yeah, the reporter.
So he used to come to my gym in secret, and we used to train. And he used to, it was funny because he used to come over and train. We used to do volley to the spar. Another guy that used to come over was Hiromitsu Kanehara from he's from
Rings.
From Rings. Well, they came over to train, and we do volley too, to like beat each other up. And Yamato would go home with like a bloody nose, a sore lip. And it's so funny because he used to tell me that he used to tell the Pancrase guys that he was going to go out to do some weight training. And sometimes he'd come up all busted up. But yeah, we put that shit aside because we're all about trying to get better, the best we can be, So the association have their rift, but as fighters, I didn't have big guys to train with at Shooto, so I used to go to UWF and train with Kanehara, Sakuraba, Takayama, Matsui, all those guys, and Yamada Manabu used to come and train in my gym with us. So it was like the associate had their rift, but we were good. All the guys are good.
For sure.
Okay, so why don't we talk about your first fight, January 21st, 1995. It's Shooto against Shingo Shigeta. How does that fight come together?
Shingo, yeah. Well, Sayama, after when I went into the Shooto gym, they wanted me to. I just wanted to, go into the amateur rim, try out, like I said, I wanted to experience and to control the anxiety to become a stronger man. So I was thinking of, the anxiety in any type of ring, whether it's amateurs or pros, would be the same. So I just wanted to experience anxiety. So I went in there to the gym asking Sayama if I could get into an amateur ring. He told me, let's see what you got, spar with this guy. And there's a little guy there stretching. And I said, I got to spar with this little guy. He's like 30 pounds lighter than me. And he goes, yeah, I want to see how you move. And I said, okay. So I sparred with him. And the little guy kind of, he didn't know jiu-jitsu. So I was twisting him up, getting his back, getting his arm, all this kind of stuff. And as soon as it was done, Simon got all excited and said, I want you to fight pros. And I'm like, whoa, I first denied. I said, no, I'm not a pro. I can't fight a pro. I said, I never fought before. And he said, no, don't believe me. You'll be ready. And I was like, holy shit. Okay. So 3 months later, later on in the couple weeks later, I found out that little kid that I sparred with was Nakai Yuki. Yeah. So, yeah. And then 3 months later, he got me a fight. He said, don't worry, Enson, get your experience. This is a pro wrestler. He's not that good. You'll get good experience in there. And that's kind of how that happened. Shigeta Shingo was a student of Kimura. He fought Hickson in the Volley Tour in Japan, but he was a student of Kimura, and Kimura is actually the ex-shoot fighter. So that's how Sayama got that link to get that guy in the ring.
Cool. Yeah, let me ask you, what'd you do? Were you exposed to Shooto first or Relson Gracie Jiu-Jitsu first?
Helson Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. I was in Hawaii, and I trained Helson with Helson for a long time, about 4 years.
Okay, cool. I got you.
Okay. So you're 4 years training. You start fighting in Japan. It's your first fight. You must have liked it because April 20th, 1995, Valley Tudo Japan, which is a savage organization that I don't think gets enough kind of credit for the types of fights that they put on. They put you against Rene Rooze, one of Peter Art's top students.
Yeah.
Do you recall that fight?
Yeah, that was my second fight. After I beat Shigeta Shingo, Simon got excited, and I was like, kind of like, okay, I'm done. That was a good experience. He goes, no, Enson, one more. I'm like, okay, one more. And he said he wanted me to fight in the Valley Tudo Japan tournament. And I declined it because Helson Gracie trained me, and I felt, I was friends with Hickson also. Hoist and Hoyler used to come into Hawaii and help me out a lot. So I just felt that whether I would actually make it to the final to fight Hickson or not, I just felt that it was disrespectful to even have that inkling of, I could possibly fight Hickson. So I declined the tournament, and that's when he put me in a one special fight against Rene Rose. Yeah.
So, real quick, Miguel. Rene Rose, just so everyone at home can kind of understand this, he's 6'7". He's a Dutch kickboxer, incredible lineage. And he's got terrible ground, except like his method of takedown defense. At the time, there was no penalty for grabbing the rope. So he would have one arm hooked under the rope while you're clinched, and he would punch you. And then when you try to change position, he would just switch the other arm under the rope and punch you with the other hand. Enson, would you like to explain to everybody how you took his back?
Yeah. It was funny because it wasn't a plan. It was just because he was very successfully holding onto the ropes and to being able to elbow me from the top because he was so tall. And it was like I just felt like, man, he's using the ropes. I can use the ropes too. And it really was the thing that I didn't think I was going to be able to do what I did. I just thought that, you know what, if he's going to use the ropes, I'm going to use it too somehow. So what I first did was I climbed up and on the first rows of ropes just so to take down the height distance, because he was dropping some solid elbows onto my head because he was so tall. So if I got up on the first rope, my head be close to his chin, so he wouldn't be able to drop elbows. And that was the first time I used the ropes, and I was like, I can use the ropes too. And I don't know, just through the little flurry that we had, all of a sudden I remember being on the back towards his back, and I was saying, holy shit. And I just stepped on the rope again, and next thing I knew, his neck was right there, and I instinctively just grabbed onto it. It wasn't a plan, it wasn't a strategy, it wasn't something that I thought about, it just something that actually just happened at the moment. Climbed the ropes and got onto his back, and I know he didn't want to go to the ground, and I felt him starting to try and dive out of the ring.
You try to dive out of the ring.
Yeah, and I felt that I'm gonna go with him. I wasn't like, holy shit, I better let go. He's gonna fall out of the ring. I thought, I'm gonna hold on to him. And by the time we fall and hit the ground and people come and get us up, he's gonna be out cold. I thought, I'm gonna hold on to this choke.
I love the old school ways. Like, you were just figuring out how to do a fight in the middle of the fight. Like, I guess I'll climb up on these ropes. It wasn't a strategy, just like, it was just figuring it out. You know what I mean? Back in 1995, nobody knew what to do then. So you learned, you created a new technique. I'm climbing up the ropes to get this guy, get even with. That's pretty awesome. I love it.
Yeah, the sport was so green that, the rules changed with every different association. Every association had a different rule. So you never could really create a strategy. And, these rules were kind of set on the day before the rules meeting because they asked if you could grab the ropes, and I was kind of against it. And I kind of sat and talked to Hickson. I said, Hickson, what are you going to do with the ropes? He goes, no problem, my friend. He said, if he grabs with this hand, you hit him on that side. You grabs with that hand, you hit him on the other side. I was saying, oh, cool. Okay, that's a good strategy. I'll just do that. And then I watched Hickson's fight with Yamamoto. and Yamamoto was putting onto the ropes. Hickson couldn't do it as simply as he said, just hit him with whatever hand he's grabbing the rope. And Hickson took some major damage in the fight. And I was sitting in the battle, holy shit, I'm in for a fucking scrap, man. It's not that easy, man. So I was like, oh, damn.
Dude, they kind of threw you into the fire because Shooto, like your first fight, if my time frame is correct, you had gloves and rounds, and it was like an octagon ring with like rope at the bottom, like the old IVC style, so you couldn't get thrown out of the ring. And now Vale Tudo Japan was full out Vale Tudo, like Brazil style.
No, the first fight I did was rings.
Oh,
it was all just ring ropes. That was the third fight I fought. They made some special little ring. Yeah.
Okay, I got you.
So
okay,
you got to kind of look at it from Rene's point of view as well. He's a kickboxer, doesn't want to go to the ground. You throw him anywhere near and he's 6'7". Anything close to a takedown, he's grabbing a rope. So if Enson would have backed off and said, okay, let's start again, it would have been in a guy that's Peter Art's top student's world, and you'd have been forced to stand and trade with a guy that's obviously deadly. So it was a brilliant move on his end in terms of
you know what's real funny about that fight was that when we watched videos on him, he was a real dirty fighter, real aggressive. So what we thought was, okay, this guy's going to come at me. It's going to be, I'm going to shoot in for a takedown. So when you watch the fight, it's like when we first started, he didn't come in for me. He stood back, and I was like, oh shit, this guy's supposed to come for me. And he stood back, and it created like a real, like, oh shit, what am I going to do? I gotta get clinched with this guy because I can't strike with this guy because I know his striking was a lot better than mine.
Yeah, no, for sure. So your third fight.
Well, speaking of dirty Dutch fighters, like that's the famous night where Hickson, beat Nakai in the finals, and Nakai lost to Gerard Gerdou, or beat Gerard Gerdou, but almost lost an eye.
No, not almost. He lost an eye.
Yeah.
He didn't almost lose the eye. He lost it.
And
he's blind in his right eye.
Yeah, and in terms of history, you're a Shooto person. And were you close to Nakai, like in the locker room? What was that scene like behind this? Like, I'll be honest with you. The question I want to ask is, how did Gerard Gerdou get out of Japan alive? You know what I mean? Why would he be allowed to do that type of gross rule breaking?
Well, like I said, the whole thing was so green that there was no really. The rules were, of course you can't eye gouge. That was understood, but it was something that he did illegally, and the fact that Nakai continued and went to the finals, I guess it didn't seem like it was that bad.
Okay.
So it was like the next day.
Nakai's a freaking warrior, so he didn't complain. He didn't cry about it or anything. So people didn't think it was as bad as it was. We just thought he got gouged, so he was swelling in his eye. We found out a month later that he lost all the nerves in his eye was dead. We found out later. So, I mean, of course, if the Japanese people knew how severe it was then, there might have been a different story, but,
Well, Gerdou, has given famous quotes of, well, he should have tapped, like, he just doesn't care.
He's cocky and rude, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Gerdou, he's like a street fighter, and what people need to understand is when the people who fought in this sport back in that day were people that were actually it was a scary sport. Nowadays, it's a legitimate sport. It's safe. The rules. There's so many rules that stop you from getting hurt. They stop the fights earlier. So it's considered a sport. Back in the day, it was considered a human cockfighting. It wasn't something that, I know 90% of the fighters that fight today wouldn't fight back then because it was too misunderstood. Nowadays, the fighters that are fighting, they're fighting because it's a sport. So, Gerdou was in there, like me. We're fighting for our lives. Of course, he put it to another extreme where he eye gouged and did dirty shit, but I didn't go to that extent. I hated Gerdou for the longest time. And the only thing I had with Gerdou after that is I actually did a pro wrestling match with him. He was super cool with that. I was actually debating on that pro wrestling match to get serious in the middle of the match and just start beating him up. But I decided not to. And about 5 years later, I went to an MMA Expo in New York, and he was there, and I got to sit down and talk to him. And you know what? The guy's a really nice guy. I don't know if he's calmed down with age, but I like the guy now. You know, I've accepted what he did. You know, Nakai's accepted what he did. We understand that it was back in the day. We understand that, you know, people change. And, you know, damn, it's unfortunate what he did, you know, to Nakai. But I really think he's a nice guy, and he was just caught in the circumstance of the sport that he was in and that personality that he had.
I mean, and Gerdou, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't he like a collector for like some, like he wasn't in like upstanding citizen in the Dutch, you know, he was a collector someone. He was like
I hear all kinds of stories about him.
So you're not dealing with just some kickboxer. He's a professional fighter. You know what I mean? Like in the true sense of the word. Exactly. That's what I mean. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. I mean, look at that guy. That guy was in the UFC 1. I watched the UFC 1 thinking, "Oh, these guys are freaking crazy. That's such a scary thing to do." You know, this guy jumped in the ring. I don't think I would have ever jumped in UFC 1. So when I jumped in, it was a little bit more understood. But you know, it's like a whole different level in the UFC 1 to 5, man. It's like I finally got into it at UFC 13, but you know, I think the people that were in the beginning, you know, guys like Dan Severn, Ken Shamrock, Gracie, man, those guys need to be recognized. And I believe that the sport is creating millionaires now with no credit to these guys. You know, Mark Coleman's having a hard time financially. You know, these guys should be credited more.
Agree.
Chris, let me interject here. So, for instance, he just kind of blew my mind right here. So, all right, the beginning guys, the UFC 1 guys, those guys were crazy to the guys that like Enson that we believe were crazy. So it's kind of like,
yeah, exactly.
You know, it's like, huh.
Hey, anybody who was still there back when there was headbutts and stuff, now the people look at us like we're crazy. When I first started fighting, you could headbutt, you could do it. Now they look at you like, oh my, I mean, when we fought, it was still NHB, you know, Knowles Bar. Now it's MMA. There's a difference. So yeah, they think we're crazy, and I think they're crazy, and it just keeps going backwards, you know.
So Enson, are you familiar with the Dutch scene? Oh wait, you know what? Let me wrap a bow on Enson Inoue, or not Enson Inoue, Gerdou. Gerdou is currently living in the mountains of Portugal with a 24/7 bodyguard, and he doesn't go into any major cities.
He needs a bodyguard?
Think about that. I don't know what he did, what he got himself into. We've tried to track him down. I've even offered the guy money, you know, and he has zero interest in entering into a large city from wherever he's at in Portugal. That's all I can tell you. I've tried.
Wow.
So are you familiar with the Dutch kickboxing scene?
Not necessarily. I've fought a couple of them, like Rene, Rooze and Andre Mannaart, but other than that, not really.
Okay, so on July 29th, 1995, I was going to hope if you can give us a little history lesson on the mafia and all of the crazy killings and things of that nature, you know, from the 90s. But I mean, obviously you were stationed in Japan. You just fought the Dutch guys there. Ed de Kruijf from Kamakura Gym was your next opponent, July 29th, 1995.
Yeah. He was a student of Gerdou.
Yeah.
And he just, I think he just won the European cage fighting right before I fought him. So he was, Simon felt it was a good step up to test myself. And because he already had contact with Gerdou, it was easy to get him in. So yeah, that was a fight that I think Ed de Kruijf was, backbone was his wrestling. So I felt that it was going to be one of my toughest fights to date.
Well, you know, I think wrestling kind of played into your favor. Whenever you came up with a wrestler, I think everybody underestimates, you know, you're not from Brazil. Your last name's not Gracie. So a lot of people would underestimate your ground game, and you would make them pay for that. Like, especially the wrestlers. You beat him with an armbar. And a little side note, one of Ed comes in there with 2-0 record. One of his wins over Dirty Bob Schreiber, who is a favorite of this show. Unfortunately, we will never get him on. He's one of our favorites.
Real quick, Enson, like, okay, that's like your fourth in a year, like 6 months, 7 months or something. I mean, you're obviously taking training pretty serious right now. I mean, is this something you're thinking, I want to do this more, I want to make a career out of this, or is this still just something for fun to test yourself?
No, at my third fight, I still was just fighting because I felt I owed that to Sayama for spending so much time with me and giving me an opportunity. Up until that fight, I still was one more fight. After I beat Edo de Kruijf, I was like, okay, I'm done. I'm going to go back to Hawaii. And Sayama again came to me, asked me, please fight another one. And I felt, okay, one last one. You know, that's pretty much how it went. I still didn't think of it as a career or anything that I was actually going to, you know, be able to build my name on.
How long were you staying in Japan for at this time?
I was there for 5 years now.
Okay, so you were living there. Okay.
So are kids not coming up to you at fights and like asking for your autograph and the little cards are being, baseball cards being made up? Is that not happening to you at this point?
Now it does, but back in the day at my third fight,
really?
You get a little trickling of some fans asking you to sign the pamphlet and stuff. Whenever I was at the events, I would get people coming up and asking for pictures and autographs, but not necessarily outside of fighting. It was just really close into the fighting scene.
Okay.
You know, you're going to sit here and say that, yeah, I'll just do one more. I'll just do one more. They're putting you against stiff competition that, you know, Rene Rooze was tough. You know, de Kruijf was tough. And you fight, your next one is Andre Mannaart, who's a 4-time world champion in both Muay Thai and kickboxing. So, like, you're sitting here telling us one thing, but then stepping in there with guys that are absolutely murderers.
Yeah, and well, he was actually really well known in Japan for his K1 fighting. He fought in K1.
Yes, Mihiro Gym, absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah, so Andre Mannaart was a big name, and you know, I think, you know, I knew he was fighting my rules and not his rules. If it was a kickboxing match, I probably wouldn't want to fight that to get my ass kicked. So it wouldn't even be in a competition if it was kickboxing. But because it was my rules, you know, he was better me standing. But if I got him to the ground, I knew he didn't understand the ground. So, you know, Andre Mannaart wasn't really Andre Mannaart after you know you're fighting in MMA rules.
Yeah,
That's pretty forward thinking of yourself back then, because I mean, if you look at his resume, it's frightening. And I mean, you win by knockout, you know, 3 minutes and 20 seconds. And at what point do you commit yourself to fighting?
After that fight.
Okay. Okay.
So after
which
that
is
fight,
Joe
I
Estes.
fought and I beat Andre, I thought Andre is a legit fighter, and I just beat him. Although it is MMA rules, I felt, you know what, man, I might be pretty good at this. Let me try and give this a serious shot. And that's when I actually decided to stay in Japan and, you know, consider it a career.
Did you live with Kid Yamamoto?
Yeah, that was later on in the day. I started dating his older sister. And in the midst of when I was seeing her, he had a big problem with the Yakuza. And I helped him. I got him out of that problem by making some phone calls to some of my friends. And because of that problem, he was banned from wrestling for 2 years, kicked out of his college, so he had nothing to do. So I just asked him you know, hey, use your wrestling and, you know, come spar and train at our gym. And he came and worked out with us. And after a couple of sessions, he looked at me and said, man, I think I want to try and turn pro. And so I told him, okay, let's see what, if you really want to do it. I brought him in the gym the next day and beat the shit out of him. woke him up the next morning with his face all bruised, his eyes all swollen, and asked him, you still want to fight? He said, yeah, I want to fight. I'm like, whoa, this kid really wants to fight. And that's when, you know, I started training him full time.
So you knew Kid before he was a fighter then? That's incredible. That's incredible.
let me ask you, we're getting into 1996 now, and in Japan, a guy named Koji Kitao is getting, I think he's going to be the first Japanese guy in the UFC when he fought Mark Hall. Is that something that you feel like you might have been in the running, or was it too soon for you? What politics played? Because he was a sumo guy. How'd that happen?
Yeah, I guess with his sumo fame, back in the day, the UFC was more of a circus show. Yeah, you got any type. What they wanted in the UFC was all different types of martial arts. And sumo just gave them a different approach. It was another different martial art to put in the ring. So regardless of Kitao was able to fight or not, it didn't matter. The fact that he was a big time Yokozuna wrestler, sumo wrestler, that was enough, of his name to get him in the UFC ring. So that's how it was back in that day. He'd probably never qualify for the UFC today.
So let me ask one more Kid Yamamoto question. He and Miguel Torres were arguably the two greatest 135-pounders in the world at one point. How close was that fight ever to happening? Coming together. Miguel Torres. Miguel Torres,
he's out of Chicago, and he was a WEC champion.
He had a 33-fight win streak at 135 pounds. He was.
I don't think that fight ever was mentioned to us ever.
They offered Miguel $500 and no plane tickets to go fight Kid in Japan in Shooto, and Miguel responded, "I'll give him 2 plane tickets and $2,000 to fight me here in Hammond, Indiana," because Miguel was such a huge ticket seller in Hammond, Indiana, that you're talking about a guy that would make $9,000, $10,000, sometimes $15,000 a fight at 135 pounds, of which there was really no availability to fight on a big show.
That was never mentioned to us. That name has never been mentioned in my head. We would have loved to fight him. I mean, Kid was willing to take on all comers. It wasn't a thing that we had any say in. I guess once that offer was turned down, the name never came up to us. We never we didn't pick our opponents. They just told us who we're fighting. So they were probably just reaching out and trying to, find different fighters.
Yeah, I had a feeling it was politics, and it had nothing to do with the fighters or the camps. It was the people in between that were kind of, positioning, because historically speaking, they were the two greatest 135-pounders in the world, and, the water separated them.
It was probably just a lack of Shooto not having enough money.
Yeah. Let me ask you, Kid, while we're on the subject, can you share like a special Kid Yamamoto moment? Because obviously he was a special fighter, but and he's not with us anymore. So is there like a short memory that you could share with us?
Yeah. There was a situation where he got us into trouble with the Yakuza.
Okay.
And it's if you go to my YouTube channel, I've actually told that story on my YouTube channel.
Okay.
But
cool.
He got into a little argument with a Yakuza, and the guy came out and started flashing his tattoos and his missing finger, and kind of told us that you're dealing with this. And Kid turns around and looks at me and says, "Can I fuck him up?" And I said, "No, don't fuck him up. Let me figure this out and let me settle this." And I tried to talk to the guy. He was being really unreasonable. And it came to a point where he said he's going to run us over. He backed his car up. He actually hit Kid, sideswiped Kid. I had another friend with me from Hawaii. He got his both knees taken out. And the guy actually came straight for me and ran me over where I flipped over the hood. So
he was serious.
That happened with us, because he couldn't shut his mouth.
So I'm noticing a trend here. That's the second time you said that Kid Yamamoto had some problem with the Yakuza, and you kind of had to straighten it out. Was that only 2 times he had problems with them, or?
That was another one. That was another time. The other time that he got banned from wrestling was just a mistake. He was screwing around with his friends, shooting air guns in the parking lot, and it so happened to ricochet and hit a Yakuza in the face.
Oh.
Yeah, it was just an unfortunate chance.
Okay.
Wow. Wow. So Joe Estes, May 7th, 1996, you experienced something that, for the first time, and that is your first loss.
Yeah, that was pretty devastating because I was totally nullified. Joe Estes was an ex-football player, strong boy, athletic, but didn't have the technique. But all he did was sound like Matt Hume in his corner, telling exactly what I was trying to do and what to do to prevent it. And he actually shut down my whole offense, and it was very frustrating. And that's when I realized that I want to fight unlimited weight class. I didn't want to fight my weight class. I wanted to fight anybody. So that's when I realized I got to get on the weights. I got to put on weight. I'm too small. I'm too weak. Yeah. So yeah, I felt it was funny because I felt like I didn't have enough power. And, most people in that sense would go like, I got to drop down a weight class, but I was the total opposite. And I was like, I got to put on more muscle. I got to get stronger.
You know what's awesome? I mean, like, man, whenever I fought, whenever I won, I don't need to learn shit. I'm the best fighter in the world. This is easy or whatever. But when you lose, you go, okay, this is when I get better. That's when you rethink things. So first loss tough, but if it helps you really build yourself and know what you have to do, then it's a good thing. And that's what's good about losing. If you can learn from it, it sounds like you learned like, okay, now I understand. Now I know what I need to do better. Is that what happened with you?
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, for me, victories and defeats are decided when you get your hand raised or not. The true victory is if you can become a better fighter for your next fight. Yeah. So, winning and losing is something you cannot control. There's going to be people that are going to be better than you. They're going to be badder than you, stronger than you. You're going to run into that. And, if you're concerned about winning and losing, getting your hand raised, it's a stressful thing that you can't control. So I always thought that, my duty is to give everything I got in the ring. And whether I win or lose is going to decide is how much I learn. If I walk in the ring the next time a better fighter, then I've considered a victory.
That's awesome.
Good.
Well, your next opponent is somebody that is incredibly interesting to us. July 7th, 1996, Valley Tudo, Japan. You fight a man with the nickname Houdini that goes by Igor Zinoviev.
Oh, shit. What a nightmare.
Why don't you tell us about that fight?
It was a good fight for me. It made me, back until that day, I always, the Gracies teach you that the guard position is a very good position to be in. And, because they say that, you can do a lot of submissions and triangles, you got a lot of sweeps. But I realized, in MMA, it's a whole different story. That there's a lot of danger being in the guard, and Igor kind of woke me up to that. It was the most frustrating fight that I could have, because when you don't understand what happened, it's a hard thing to take. If you lose a fight, you say, okay, I know why I got tired. I got to work on my stamina. It's a lot easier, but in that one, I got caught. I got caught in a guillotine, and when he got a guillotine, as soon as I got a guillotine, he struck me, and I got unconscious, and it was like all that training, 36 seconds, and it's all done. It's like, I was, after that fight, I was at the verge of actually calling it quits. It was so frustrating.
Did you ever keep in contact with him?
No, I didn't, man. I know he fought Frank after that and then didn't really come back after that.
Do you know where he may have gone?
No, I was hoping you guys did.
Yeah.
Mike knows.
He became the bodyguard for Jeffrey Epstein. Yeah, I was just, want to see the flight logs. And yeah, I wanted to check the flight logs and maybe see your name on it. But maybe get a scoop here.
Wow. Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah, we had Oleg Taktarov on, and when we asked him about Zinoviev, he wanted so bad to tell us what he knew, but he just said it's so horrible that like the man has to pay a price for this when he leaves here. He's like, when he leaves here, he's going to answer for all of that. Like he's just, yeah, I don't know what he was into, but it is what it is. October 4th. 1996, Mushtaq Abdallah. That is your next opponent. It's a really good bounce back fight for you.
Yeah. Well, I fought Mushtaq because I was actually thinking of hanging it up. I just felt that there was so much, it was so frustrating to lose in 36 seconds when I worked so hard. Yeah, so I 2 in a row. And I thought, you know what, maybe this isn't made for me. Maybe I'll just do jiu-jitsu from now. So Sayama asked me to do another fight just to make sure. And I was like, okay, I'm going to see if I'm good. So, Sayama wanted me to take another pro wrestler that I could beat. And I was like, no, if I'm going to find out if I'm going to continue with this or not, I want to know now. I don't want to know because I'm, in 2 or 3 fights. I want to get it done and know now. And he asked me who I want to fight. And the name that stood out to me the most was Mushtaq, because he fought in the same volley to the ring that I fought in. And he fought Kikuta, who beat Egan in the Rumex. And I remember the scene where Mushtaq was in a knee bar and Kikuta had it pretty damn far extended and he just kept kicking Kikuta in the face. And I mean, it was like a beast. And I was saying, that's the kind of guy I want to fight.
I love it.
To see if I'm going to be able to stay in the sport or not. And yeah, that's why I picked him. He's a good wrestler, a strong, big boy. Lived in Australia, trained with some of the guys from, I think, what's his name? He trained with some of the guys who were fighting Shooto, so he was at a legit gym. So yeah, so Mushtaq was one that was pretty much my do or die fight. And if I lost that fight, I probably wouldn't be around today.
Miguel, was he with Hazeman? Was he working out with Hazeman?
I don't think Chris Hazeman did Shooto, but it might have been. Ian
Larry.
There you go. Larry Papadopoulos. Yeah, I remember.
Papadopoulos. Yeah, he was one of his students.
Okay.
Enson, it's funny. Chael Sonnen always says, your job as a fighter is fight the easiest guy possible for the most amount of money. Old school guys didn't think like that. Like that was never a thought because money wasn't really involved. So you obviously went the other direction with that, which is awesome. But you were basically, like I said, testing yourself the whole time because you want to fight the best guys and see if you can still be in this sport. I don't think anybody can understand the highs and the lows in this sport. When you win, it's a great thing. But when you lose, how down the dumps you get, man. Like losing 2 in a row, you almost quit. I mean, I think all fighters been there. Can you describe how low you got and what it made you do to want to continue fighting?
Well, I trained so hard for it, and for it to be ending that fast, when I had no chance.
Yeah.
And you know what really didn't help? I had Egan cornering me, and Egan was a jiu-jitsu guy he didn't really like MMA. And when we're walking out of the ring, the moment after I lose, when I'm at the weakest point, he looks over at me, he goes, fuck, there's too much shit to cover in this MMA shit. We got to come back to jiu-jitsu. And I'm like, I'm at a super low, and I'm almost like, yeah, I think you're right, man. I got to go back to jiu-jitsu. And when I went back home, I thought to myself, man, you know what? If I'm going to call it quits, I'm going to give myself one last chance and make sure I'm not made for this or I'm made for this. I got to find out. For sure. Good. That's why, Mushtaq came in. Yeah. Nice. And Chris, I always have this thing in my head. You watch the corner of the fighters. Watch how they rejoice after the fight. You know what that shows? That shows insecurity. So if the fighter's crying and screaming, that shows that he was really worried about the fight. Mm-hmm. If the fighter just goes and says, yeah, like, Khabib, he knew he was going to win. He had no insecurities about the fight. So you watch all my fights, most of the time, I pretty much like, hey, I accepted win or lose. And I wasn't really had insecurities about losing. But in that Mushtaq fight, if you watch that fight after I won, I screamed and yelled in the air, which was probably one of my only times I've ever done that, is because there was a lot of anxiety about, being ready.
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense.
That's really interesting. That's a really interesting take on that. Ray, April 6, 1997. Absolute gimmick fight, obviously. You fight Zulu. He lost his first 2 fights to Rickson Gracie. He beats Sergio Bottarelli, famous Brazilian promoter. I think Sergio's working for the Brazilian government right now, and he helps open Brazilian top teams all over the world to encourage tourism through jiu-jitsu to Brazil. And he's done a phenomenal job doing that. You fight Zulu. What was your, did you have any thoughts or doubts going into that fight?
Well, Sama asked me wanted to fight Zulu. I saw him as like a monster because Rickson Gracie was like a hero to us in the jiu-jitsu world. And he's the only one that wanted to fight Rickson twice, you know. So for us, it was like, whoa, this guy is like some animal, you know, like. And when we fought him, you know, nowadays you hear all the fighters say stuff like, I'll beat him the first round, I'll beat him in the second round. The funny thing about me is I've never ever thought that I would beat my opponent. I always thought all the opponents I picked were people that I thought was going to give me a crazy war or was going to break me. And Zulu was one that was like, man, this guy's huge. He's a monster. He's fought Rickson. And when Sayama offered that match to me, I was all for it. Like, yeah, I got to fight Zulu. Zulu's a legend. You know, in the jiu-jitsu world, in Gracie Jiu-Jitsu Action 1, he's like the last fight that Rickson fought. And he was like a very famous, like, monster that challenged Rickson. Yeah, so I was excited about that fight.
Especially in Japan, where like that larger than life persona, really, like that's not a fight that they he was older, and you know, at the end of the day, you're a real fighter and he's more of a brawler, but they buy it and it gave you a lot of cred. Is that,
yeah.
Would you agree with that?
What? That he
gave you a lot, that he gave you a lot of credibility because he was such a legend, like a big name, even though he probably wasn't a tough fight.
Well, I don't know. I'm not sure about that, but yeah, he was. Yeah, I think technically he wasn't technically there, but he was. You know, he's in the sport for a much longer time. So he was fighting in Brazil a lot. You know, in those Vale Tudo events where it was bare-fisted. So, you know, experience-wise, he was way over me on experience. Technique-wise, I think I might have been a little more technical.
Yeah, for sure. You know, there's been a couple instances in your career where you got maybe a punch or two extra in on somebody. And I just kind of figured maybe there was some bad blood. Did you have issues with Zulu? Because, I mean, you made sure you got a couple extra in on that one.
Yeah, this is an interesting story on Zulu. I had no problem with him. I had a problem with his cornerman.
What does cornerman do?
His cornerman, okay, so, you know, Zulu's from Luta Livre.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, Rickson and, you know, Zulu, you know, Rickson and Hugo Duarte, you know, there was a big rivalry with Jiu-Jitsu and Luta Livre. So I saw Luta Livre as the enemy.
Okay.
And when we walked out into the ring, I got into the ring and Zulu came out. I noticed there was a pretty high up jiu-jitsu guy walking with him in this corner, John Roberto. He's a red belt now.
Wow.
So when I saw him in the corner, I thought, what the fuck? I'm fighting as jiu-jitsu. I'm fighting Luta Livre, and a jiu-jitsu guy's cornering him to beat me up. You know, and for me, it wasn't a sport. It was life and death. And I'm thinking, John Roberto's in the corner trying to end my life, and I'm the one representing jiu-jitsu. So I was kind of pissed at that. And then what took it over the edge was that I guess in my gloves, you know, we were allowed to tape our hands in the gloves. And I guess they had a misunderstanding of the rules. And he made a big stink before the fight about me having tape on my hands. And I wanted to fight. I just wanted to get the fight going. And he kept complaining to a point where it was like, fuck, man, come on, let's just fight, you know? And it was just that anxiety, that, you know, that frustration just built up to a point where, you know, I couldn't hit the corner, man. So I just figured, fuck Zulu, man, you know?
I love it.
You know, Zulu played mind games. So he was playing games. I'm not going to say mind games, but he was playing games the whole way. The whole step of the way. They ring the bell. Zulu goes to the referee. Time out. I don't have my mouthpiece in. My corner still has it. So it was just kind of like, you know, just to kind of get you going and stop. Get you going, stop. It was pretty interesting watching how that all unfolded.
It worked. It got me frustrated. But unfortunately, in this situation, it worked to his disadvantage because, you know, it could have happened where I got too frustrated, went too hard and blew my stamina. Yeah. You know, and as far as a mind game, it worked. But unfortunately, this time, unfortunately for me, it worked in my favor. The aggression helped me, take him out early and allowed him to get an extra punch.
Yeah, because I mean, what you're describing is an old boxing technique. Like you got to go and watch the other corner wrap the hands, and oh no, you got to do this wrong. You wrap the wrong knuckle. Rewrap the hands. It's just kind of part of the game. And in jiu-jitsu, in MMA at this point, even today, it still has not entered into like that aspect of the sport, even though it's existed in boxing for almost 100 years. That type of behavior. Yeah. So May 30th, 1997, UFC 13, Royce Alger, Hammer House, cornered by the greatest corner man of all time, Mark Coleman, comes in and meets you center stage.
Yeah, that the reason, if you notice the Zulu fight, there was elbows included in the fight because I was already headed to the UFC to fight in that, and they allowed elbows. So I asked Sam if we could have special rules that we could have elbows, so I could, have the experience throwing and taking elbows. So yeah, so that was already planned before Zulu's fight, and this one is in a lightweight tournament. It was the first time I had to cut weight, which was horrible. I didn't like it. I'm not a weight cutter. I suck at weight cutting. I mean, you guys would laugh at me when I say I had to lose like 3 pounds and I was dying I was dying in the room, spitting in a cup, trying to drop 3 pounds. And I go to the locker room the night before and weigh myself, and I'm, I got 2 pounds to go, and I'm like, oh fuck, 2 more pounds. And Tito Ortiz is there, jumped on the scale. He's 10 pounds over and goes, perfect. And I'm like, perfect. You're 10 pounds over. He goes, yeah, tomorrow morning the sauna. I'm like, how the hell do you guys do that? So that was a real big experience for me. I believe the UFC 13 was the last UFC that they allowed you to have an option to put on the glove or fight bare-fisted. And, like for me, my whole thing about being in the sport wasn't about a sport. It was about a real fight. So I opted to be bare-fisted. And they didn't allow you to tape your own hands. So they had to tape your hands, and they literally didn't tape a single piece of tape on your hand. It cut right off from the thumb to the wrist. It was crazy.
So Alger is a University of Iowa assistant coach, Golden Glove boxer, 2-time national champ, 2-time world's champion. I mean, like his resume is sick. And why don't you tell us how you won that fight?
Yeah, knowing, and I know Dan Gable said something about him being one of his most ferocious wrestlers. So, that turned me on, man. I thought this guy is going to put me in positions that I'm gonna either have to build my strength in my heart or I'm going to fold. And I thought I was a tough guy, and I thought that I want to see where I get pushed, where I would break, because then I would learn something. And Coleman, I remember going into the interviews and stuff. I remember him saying like, "Oh, Coleman was a good callus for the sport, but now let's bring in the A team." I'm like, "Whoa!" And I realized that in the wrestling world, Coleman was good, but Royce was like another level above Coleman. So I'm okay. Well, I was excited. I saw, I felt that I was well prepared. I had some weapons that he didn't have. He had a lot of weapons that I didn't have, and I felt that we're going to go head on head. My ferocity against his ferocity, and see who bends, who's going to bend it, who's going to break. And, that's what happened. I mean, I went in there and it was exciting for me. I thought, I'm going to see, I know his shot is really good. So I figured my whole thing was I'm going to fake a shot, sprawl on top of him. And from there, it was like, whatever happens. But, I think I got the lucky upper hand on the thing. He wasn't prepared for the submissions. I got to lock in a real solid arm bar, and that was probably the worst break I've ever done in an arm, because usually if you guys ever got submitted someone an arm bar and you felt the little popping in the arm, it's either the ligaments rolling over or tearing. This one wasn't even, there was no ligaments. It was like one big pop, like poke. Oh. Yeah, so I don't know if it just dislocated or it broke something, but it was a huge pop. It was not unlike any other arm that I felt before.
Enson, you know what's funny, real quick, Miguel? It's funny about this is, I'm not gonna lie, I don't know anybody who like wants to test himself and push himself on the biggest platform in the world. You know what I mean? It's just like, that's a rarity. You know, most people are wanting to do that in the gym or do it somewhere people don't see, but you're wanting to test yourself in front of the whole world to see, which is such a rarity, man. I love it. So that's really cool to hear, brother.
You know what's real funny is I'm training a student now. He used to be an ex-sumo wrestler, and he's more of a sportsman, yeah. So he likes to fight people he beats, and I'm not going to push my style on him. But when you guys were just reading the credentials of Bryce Alger, I actually had a tinge of like, holy shit, I fought that guy with all those credentials. It's like, I would never put my fighter into a fight like that.
Enson,
really
this is just a small snippet of like his background. Like his background is insane. But like the one alarming thing that you said on our end is, yeah, I mean, someone's gonna bend, someone's gonna break, we're gonna rush each other. And hey man, someone's gonna bend. We're talking about a guy. Wrestling is one of the toughest sports in the entire world.
Yeah, true.
Doesn't bend.
He hasn't bent in years against like Olympians.
All I can tell you is that arm bent. I was actually lucky enough to be within 10 feet of that.
No way.
I was at that show, yeah, and it was very impressive. But me and Mike had a discussion because I'm going off old memory, and he recently saw it. Why didn't you continue? I thought you got your orbital hurt, but I could be making that up.
Why didn't you continue in the tournament? So you get your hand raised, but then you don't move forward. Right.
So what happened was I went into the back and I did I'm sure most fighters know this today, but I didn't know this. But after a fight, you don't want to blow your nose for 24 hours because if you had, there's a real thin faceplate holding your orbital. And if you get a little crack in it, it's going to leak. So what I went to my locker room. I wanted to see if my nose is bleeding. I blew my nose and I felt my eye I felt like the air was pushing behind my eye, like my eye was getting pushed back. So Egan freaked out, ran and called the doctor. The doctor came and starts pushing on my face, and I'm like, I'm fine. Let me fight. I'm thinking I can still see with this eye, so I'm okay. I know Guy Menzer had a hard fight. I had a fast fight, minute and 30 seconds. I'm trying to convince the doctor that I'm okay. And he tells me, no, because your face blew up, there's a crack in your orbital. And I'm like, yeah, but it doesn't hurt. I'm pushing my own eye. And he goes, no, there's so much swelling. There's so much air in it. You're not going to feel it anyway. And he said, I got to stop the fight because if you catch another wrong punch in that same area, it could cave in your whole face and you would have to have constructional surgery.
Hey, did you let him know I'm not afraid of surgery?
I actually
and I have another eye
because of that. And Tito Ortiz was my replacement.
Oh,
yeah.
So Miguel, you were correct because I didn't see you take any heavy punches in that fight.
I didn't either. So I must have got hit somewhere in the eye that it cracked my orbital.
Could have been a headbutt accidental.
I think maybe when you transitioned for the armbar, you were kind of belly down. I wonder if it was against the mat.
No, I think when I first got to my back, when I actually had him in a crucifix and he dumped me forward because I was trying to elbow instead of create a base. And when I first got into the guard, he was throwing some punches at me. I think he grazed me with a couple of them. Not enough to rock me or me to remember the punch, but I think enough, like they say, there's a paper thin bone through your face that holds in the air on your face. So it had a little crack probably. So,
Oh, wow. All right. So here's the real question.
Fights are great. I can tell you just close up to that was intense because Royce this was not like, he made a mistake and I got him in an armbar. It wasn't a soft transition. Every second of that fight was brutal.
Yeah. Yeah, it was ferocious.
It was intense. Yeah, it was a good, intense fight.
Yeah. All right. So fights are great, Miguel. I think Miguel and I like to argue about little facts that nobody really cares about other than us. There's one thing that's been kind of coming up in this podcast lately, and it's the UFC 13 after party. Were you there?
I remember that.
Well, bring us through what you saw.
You know what? I didn't see shit because I was actually outside getting interviewed. and I heard the whole ruckus happen. And by the time I got in, people were all being held back. Chairs were all over the place. Yeah. So actually, you know, I don't really know what happened in that. I was out of it. Luckily, I wasn't even involved in it. You know, I was outside getting interviewed by Japanese press.
So we're talking about the Tank Abbott versus Carlson Gracie Sr. students and Mark Coleman kind of challenging everybody at the same time.
Is that what no, hey, you know, mentioning that, you know, Mark Coleman, that's a
we know
big
Mark
thing.
very well.
I didn't know Mark at the time as personally. I know he's a good friend now, but he was before the fight. You know, the UFC was so bootleg that where I was warming up to fight, right across to the other side of the ring, other side of the hallway, Royce was warming up.
Yeah.
And I remember hearing Coleman screaming at Royce, telling him that you're gonna fuck him up so bad that his own mother's gonna need to ask him for an ID to come in his house. I remember hearing that thing, whoa. And it, you know, it didn't scare me, but it gave me like, fuck, man, there's more incentive to fuck this guy up now. And you know what was real crazy is, you know, after I beat Royce, we went back to the locker room. I went back to the locker room, and there was a door between where me and Coleman, our team and their team was staying. And Coleman was screaming profanity, pounding on the door, kicking the door, and me and Egan were looking at each other. Holy fuck, I think that guy's gonna come through the door, you know. It's so funny. I think he was drunk too, you know, at the time. So
we can confirm that he was, yes.
I don't believe that.
I love the guy, dude. He's such an awesome guy, man.
You know, he's sober now. He's 9 months sober.
Wow, right on.
He is working in a sober, like, living facility, giving speeches about it. Man, like, we feel, I've known Mark for, you know, the better half of 15 years, and it's like he's back again. Like, it's honestly, like, his sobriety means the world to him, and it means even more to us, the people that actually care about it.
All right.
So
that's awesome, man.
So after that, you've got kind of, you want to kind of get back some of your losses. And after that bout, October 12th, 1997, you're the main event for Shooto against Joe Estes in a rematch.
Yeah, that was a huge fight because I lost to him before. And I was actually offered to fight in Pride 1. And back in that day, I was fighting Shooto for like $3,000 a fight. And Pride comes up and offers me a fight in Pride and says they'll pay me 20 grand for the fight. I'm like, holy shit, 20 grand. I'm like, holy shit, 20 grand's a lot of money for us fighters back in that day. And, and I wanted to do that, but Shooto really wanted me to fight in Shooto. And they said, if we make it a title match and you fight Joe Estes, they said, will you fight in Shooto? I said, okay, if it's a title match, I'll fight in Shooto again. So the funny story behind that is I turned down Pride, and 2 weeks before the fight, Shooto comes and tells me that they don't know if they can make it a title match because Joe Estes is too expensive. He's demanding too much money. And I'm like, oh shit. I'm pissed off because I'm telling Shooto that you guys fucking promised me a title match. And I gave up the big opportunity in Pride because you guys told me the title match. And they said, well, no other fighter would be a legit title match for you. I'm like, I agree. I said, get that fucker here. And it came to a point where I called Shooto, the head. I said, you know what? Whatever you guys gonna take from my fight money, give it to him. Get his ass here, man. Get his ass here. And that's why there was a lot of animosity in that fight. As you know, that's probably the other fight that I kind of try to get extra punches in. I was pissed off at him for, I was pissed off because he talked the big show. And when I finally got Mount, I think I hit him with 2 solid punches and he starts tapping. And I'm thinking to myself, you're gonna talk that big, you're gonna demand that money, you're gonna take my fight money. Fuck. Fight harder, man. Don't give up so bad. It pissed me off. And I remember thinking to myself when the ref stopped the fight, it wasn't like I won. It was like more like, I gotta fucking hit you one more time. You fucking talked a big story. And then the ref, I missed the next punch. And then the ref starts tackling me. I'm like, I gotta get you one more time. I'm trying to get one at a time. And like, that's what happened in that. So,
well,
just for record, Pride 1 was October 11, 97, and the Shooto show was October 12th, the following night. So obviously,
Oh wow.
you know, no way to do both. And Shooto played it hardball, huh?
Now, would you think that like that Shooto? I mean, was that part of that loyalty thing we talked about, or was this about the title? Because man, I mean, they're giving you 6.5 times more money. That's tough back in the that's a whole lifetime of that's a long time of fighting.
Year of work.
We think it was just about like when I was there was no thought of fighting for another organization. You fought for who you fought for, and that was it. Was that kind of a loyalty thing, or was it just because you won the title? What was the reason you stuck with Shooto instead of Pride?
No, the loyalty would have been there whether they were fought in Shooto or fought in Pride, because I was going to go to Pride as a Shooto representative.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's what it was going to be. It was just the opportunity that I saw that, you know, Hickson was going to be called. Hickson was still a big hero to me. So, you know, Hickson's going to fight in the ring. Pride's one of the huge associations now. You know, they're going to make a big boom. There's big stories about Pride becoming really huge, you know, and, you know, I felt like, you know, I was always going to fight in Shooto. I was just going to go fight that one fight in Pride and, you know, represent Shooto. Yeah. So, yeah, it wasn't necessarily loyalty. There was more like the opportunity that I had to turn down.
Okay.
Well, let me kind of frame this before we move to the next fight. So Enson talks about trying to get a couple extra punches in. I don't really think that properly describes what took place.
Mm-hmm.
The referee gets involved and your corner is so concerned. Now, you got to remember, Enson's corner normally, and we're going to address this later on, they have actually had to been peeled off of referees at times. Like Enson's corner, they're straight gang banging. Bro, they are gang banging, and they're in his corner. In this instance, they jumped on you because they were so concerned of what might take place after that fight. So it was a referee and your own corner.
Yeah. I realized that after the fight. I was like a pit bull focused on just hitting him one more time. I didn't know who was grabbing me, who was touching me, you know, but, you know, it was one more punch. That guy can't, you know, talk a big story and then quit after 1-2 punches. I got to hit him one more time, you know.
Love it.
So one of your big, like when you want to look at the grit events in Inoue, because, you know, Enson, we do this a couple times a week. We always have, you know, 2 different people on a week. And I always try to pick out that one fight where you could really see the grit of a person that we're interviewing. And Valley Tudo, Japan, November 29th, 1997, I think your bout with Frank Shamrock is something that if you want to know all about Enson Inoue, this is the fight you need to watch.
Too bad I didn't win that one then.
Yeah, but I think even in a loss, I give you more respect in a loss, you know, than yeah, maybe in a win in this instance.
But that was a crazy fight because I learned so much in that fight. I learned a lot in that fight. That's probably the most learning I've done. I learned more in that fight than any other fight that I fought. Oh, besides Igor.
Yeah. What was Frank like? Was he technical? What did you run into there?
He was tough. He was durable, very technical, very slippery, smart. I mean, especially with Maurice in his corners. Maurice is a smart man. The brains
Maurice
that they had together, you know, I think I was more this thug just trying to brawl, and he was the smart guy. You know, I got the mount. He within the rules, he knew how to nullify the mount, which is really frustrating for me because I couldn't elbow in the head. You know, I could elbow only the body. So, you know, it was really frustrating. You know, so I mean, Frank, I wanted to break Frank. He was unbreakable. One of my toughest fights. It was funny because it was one of my toughest fights, but one of my most fun fights I've had.
Well, I don't think a lot of people realize there was a period Frank Shamrock was, to me, the best fighter in the world. You know, I mean, like when he beat Tito, and like, man, I mean, yeah, he was. There's little periods where certain people are the best in the world, and at that point, I think that was him. So go ahead.
Yeah. So Enson, like here, I mean, just so people can at home, so I can kind of frame it properly. Enson loses the first round. I mean, he's in the fight, but he's clearly like, I'm not going to use, I don't like to use the word outclassed because I don't want it to seem disrespectful, but you could see that there was a difference in talent. So now Enson goes back to his corner. I don't know what was said there. I don't know what transpired, but in that second round, like Enson found a different gear and just ran his engine on red and almost finished Frank Shamrock. It's dude, you know, it's like, you know, if you're dribbling a basketball and you got to get by a guy to kind of just get a layup in and you really push yourself and you can do it for like maybe 7-8 seconds of really like exerting yourself. Enson did that for like 3.5 minutes and almost finished Frank Shamrock. Even had him mounted at one time.
That was fun.
Nice.
Yeah, that was incredible. That was incredible. You know, your corner also at this point was pretty active. I think you just kind of ran out of gas at this point because the energy that you were expending was, you know, it's very few people can kind of run on red that long. And I think your corner was worried that Frank was going to keep punching you. And
No, you know what happened with that is in that day we had this in MMA, in NHB, we had this weird rule that there was actually a 10 count on the ground. There was a 10 count standing too. You know, when you're standing, if you get knocked down, there's a 10 count. And I was totally against that rule because you knock the guy down, it's part of the fight. You got to defend yourself, jump on. They're going to jump on you and pound you, step on your face. You know, you got to defend yourself. So I was totally against that rule. So in that fight, there was actually a rule that there was a 10 count. So what happened was when I got knocked down, the ref was trying to give me a 10 count and Frank continued to strike. So when my brother saw that, I guess he just, you know, he saw red and ran in and tried to stop Frank from punching me. And, you know, for me, I felt that, you know, it's just labeled as a DQ, I think, but I don't really see it as a DQ because I don't like those rules. And if the rules wasn't there, Frank knocked me down with the knee, he would have jumped on me and pummeled me and I would have lost anyway, you know. So for me, it's a loss. I hate to say it's a DQ. It's a loss. I lost. He knocked me out, you know. And you saw my corner. Yeah, you know, it's the corner. You know, the thing that people don't realize is today it's a sport. And if you want to say that me and my corner had bad sportsmanship, we did because it wasn't a fucking sport. It wasn't a sport. You don't tell me that. You know, nowadays they're coming in to try and get out of the fight not injured. They want to win, you know, they want to look good. They shit talk to bring more pay-per-views in. You know, back in my day, you know, back in your day too, Chris, you know, our day, it was about, you know, we're not trying to sell pay-per-views because there was no pay-per-view.
No.
Yeah, and it was about life and death. You know, it's about honor. So we're going in there, two men going in there, and we're going to see who breaks. If you're going to kill me, I'm going to kill you first, you know? And so when you have that mentality in the fight, your corner has that mentality. And when they see Frank jumping on me, Egan, especially as a brother, looking like, oh, fuck, he's trying to kill my brother. I mean, you're not going to go run in there and say, referee, stop him. He's trying to hurt my brother. You're going to take it. You're going to take the shit into your own hands and stop the guy personally, you know? So it's a little different, you know? Bad sportsmanship, okay, you want to say that, fine, I'll accept that.
Well, but you know what? Like I always tell people now, just what you keep saying. You know, this has turned into me, and this is an athletic contest. But back in the day, it was a fist fight. It was a fight, and that's why I keep telling people now. I do some commentary for the BKFC, the bare knuckle fighting.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, I love it. And I'm like, man, this is the only thing it's not a sport. It's still a fist fight, and that's what I love about it. You still got two guys. It's not about trying to go out there and out-jab. It's about trying to knock his head off. And that's what fighting used to be when we started. And that's one thing I loved about it. It's lost that. Now MMA is more like a boxing thing where it's like, I'm going to take this guy down 3 times and hold. I got to win this and get to the next title fight. The money involved. There was no money involved. You were stupid if you fought for money. You just fought because you loved doing it. And it was a fist fight. And it was a fight for the toughest guy. And that's what it is, an internal battle. And it was awesome. We loved it. That's gone in MMA, in my opinion, now.
And you know what's funny is, you know, the shit talking going on nowadays. Back in the day, we never shit talk. If we really didn't like you, we didn't like you. And, you know, I always imagine, you know, the way Connor talks shit about his opponent, if I had an opponent like Connor, the fight would probably happen in the lobby.
Exactly.
Yeah, there wasn't enough money to hold it to the event. No,
hell no. And that's personal,
you're not gonna
man.
get paid, so.
I don't call my opponent an asshole unless I really feel like he's an asshole. I don't tell my opponent that I want to hurt you unless I really want to hurt him. You know, I won't say that kind of stuff. So, you know, whether I want to hurt you in the ring or in the lobby, it's the same thing. You know, so it's a whole different mentality. It's a whole different sport.
Sure. No,
it's an athletic contest, not a fist fight. Go ahead, Miguel.
No, I was just gonna say it gets worse than that. The two fighters contact each other and say, all right, let's have a Twitter war. You know what I mean? It's like they plan this shit sometimes.
Yeah, we're gonna have an internet beef.
That's crazy. That's crazy. Let's have an internet beef so we make more money.
Here, this is what we'll do. You unlike one of my comments, and I'll just go haywire. You know?
We can't have that.
So, all right. We're talking about levels here.
We're hopping from legend to legend.
Well, we're talking about levels here. So it seemed that Enson kind of got dragged into a fight because a promoter saw somebody that could sell some tickets. In the middle of all of this, he says, I'm not sure, I'm on the fence. By this time, Enson, there is absolutely no way that you're not addicted to the adrenaline rush. Because October 25th, 1998, which is almost a full year later, you had a full year off. Valley Tudo, Japan invites another Olympic ladder candidate, Randy Couture, to do battle with yourself. Want to walk us through it?
Yeah, I remember when I was offered Randy Couture, I was offered Dan Severn or Randy Couture.
Well, Severn would have been in Pride, and there would have been a money exchange in the back room.
Yeah, but Severn was going to actually in the Valley Tudo. I was offered either Severn or Randy, and knowing me, who's a more dangerous fighter is Randy Couture, because Randy, right before that I got that offer, he actually beat, Vitor Belfort was the phenom. Like his hands are incredible, and Randy dirty boxed him and knocked him out. When I saw that, it was, and I got Randy's name came up, I was like, I gotta fucking face Randy. I gotta see what that feels like, So that's how Randy came about. Yeah. And it was frustrating because all the interviewers and everybody going into the fight was kind of like, the more like, not like, oh, right, kick his ass. It was kind of like, oh, you're going to be okay. You're fighting Randy Couture. And it got to a point where, yeah, okay, I'm real about it. I know Randy was a better fighter of overall, his wrestling, his experience, everything, UFC champion. And what pissed me off was I felt that, hey, he's human. You choke any human, I don't care how big or how strong they are, you get a deep choke in, they're going to go to sleep like any other human being. If I get the Rock's arm, or if I get Arnold Schwarzenegger's arm or Randy Couture's arm, with my hips, I'll break his arm. So I felt that they're not giving me that chance that Randy's a human being. Mm-hmm. And it got to a point where I got really annoyed with it, to a point where when that fight turned out really perfect. My fight, the whole thing was about just coming at Randy, no matter what, just coming at him. And my whole thing was
that's what he does.
In the Valley Tudo Japan, they didn't have any rules on how much tape you could put on your shins. So I literally put a whole roll of, those white athletic tapes. I put a whole roll on my left shin, thinking that Randy's going to come out and I'm going to inside kick his left leg and break his leg on the first kick. So I wasn't even thinking about the takedown or anything. I was saying, I'm going to break his leg and I'm going to come at him like he's never came at again. So when I kicked him, of course, the leg didn't break. He took me down. And when I got to the ground and I missed the triangle, he stood up. And I just felt that, okay, I got to keep the pressure. That's why I started attacking him from the bottom. And then when it kind of got stale where he stood back, I thought, oh, this is not a smart move, but I got to keep the pressure going. So that's why I stood up and started to throw down with him again. So, that was a exciting fight for me. I actually, when the second time we got to the ground, if you watch the video again, I set up the armbar, but I didn't really take it because I knew he won the heavyweight tournament when I beat Royce Alger. He won the heavyweight tournament in the UFC in the same Augusta, Georgia fight. So I felt he knew I had good armbars. So I didn't think he'd get stuck in that. And I remember him holding the back of my head thinking, okay, I'm going to set this armbar up. I'm not going to take it because he's probably setting me up to pull it out and then, get past my guard, So I waited. And when I felt him release his left hand to strike, I thought, shit, he's not aware of the armbar. And by then my leg was right behind his neck. And when I felt him lift his left hand off my head, I just swung that leg over and locked his arm. And I remember feeling his ligaments roll over or pop or whatever. It was going to pop up in my crotch. And I remember feeling him tap my leg, and it was kind of surreal. I was like, holy shit. I think I just beat Randy Couture. I was like, whoa, he's tapping. Randy's tapping.
Well, I mean, to kind of really encapsulate this, Randy Couture's with the Raw team. He's got Rico Chiapparelli, who, I mean, is very, and not just his wrestling credentials, but his jiu-jitsu credentials are pretty incredible as well. He's got Matt Lindland and Tom Erickson in his corner. So he's got 3 legendary guys in the opposite corner. And when Randy took you down, you were kind of moving your hips a little bit. I felt as a viewer that Randy felt what you were doing and said, you know what? I'm out of my element here. I want no part of this, and stood up with you. That's kind of what I took from it.
You know what happened on this stand-up is I had him in a triangle. And he stood up and lifted me off the ground where I couldn't hold on to the triangle.
It seemed to me that he was just like, you know what? There's levels to this game. I'm not adept to dealing with this. And when you look at Randy, now he's going to have to break a lifelong habit. I mean, we all know he dirty boxed, Vitor Belfort. But against yourself in a ring, it just seemed like it was inevitable that it was going to go back to the ground again. And he had doubts after that first exchange.
But lo and behold, he takes me to the ground.
Yeah, it's a habit. You do something, for 20 plus years, you're going to keep doing it. Miguel Durante, February 24th, 1999. Does that date ring a bell with you and Mr. Inoue?
Like I said before, he's hopping from legend to legend to legend. First, he's got Frank Shamrock, then he's got Randy Couture, and then he gets jiu-jitsu legend Mario Sperry. So now,
did you put that together, Miguel?
No. I was actually, this is 99. I was actually there as a reporter, but I was there and got to witness it. I actually interviewed Enson, set up a camera with him and talked to him before the fight. So definitely good memories, but that was just, how'd you get that invite? Because that's an interesting story, because obviously with submission after submission with your arm bars and things, and they didn't want another Brazilian. So you were in a good spot. How was that offer made?
I think that offer was made because the Sheik was a big fan of MMA and he saw me beat Randy. And pretty much my credentials, I'm nowhere near Mario Sperry's credentials in jiu-jitsu. I think I just got it because I beat Randy Couture. So Randy Couture's victory gave me that fight, that super fight. A lot of money, a lot of recognition, a very good chance. I had nothing to lose. I mean, Mario Sperry's supposed to kick my ass, so I had nothing to lose.
Yeah, no, it was awesome. Now let me ask you, how much will you reveal how much you got paid?
I can review, but I forget. 15,000, I think.
Okay, and that makes sense.
I think it was 15,000, and I got a shirt. This kid asked me to put on his shirt before and after the fighting. He said, "I'll give you $5,000 for it." I'm like, "Give me that shirt."
Nice.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
We got paid. I got paid $20,000 cash for that fight.
And Sperry got 50, so that makes good sense. You went the distance with him. Was it a frustrating fight for you? Because he's kind of one of those guys, maybe later we'll get to talk about Barrett and his experience with Royler Gracie. Kind of the same thing where it's like these guys play it so safe. It almost gets, talk about it. Were you frustrated in that fight?
It was the most frustrating fight I've ever had because I knew Mario was better than me, and I was, for that fight, I was practicing a lot of leg locks because I felt that jiu-jitsu guys didn't understand leg locks at the time. So I figured in the scramble, as he's probably out-positioning me, I was going to be able to find the leg somewhere. So when I made a mistake of trying to attempt to throw and underestimated his size and his balance, and he ended up on top of me. And that was pretty much the whole fight. He played a good game where he would escape my guard. he would let me get his leg back, escape his guard, and he'd just like add up the points. And it came to a point, I remember in that Abu Dhabi, the wrestlers were trying to beat the jiu-jitsu guys by taking them down and running back and letting them, letting them stay away. So I noticed the jiu-jitsu guys were doing like this hand motion with their hand, like this, come on, fight. And when Mario was doing that to me, I remember looking over at Carlson Gracie and kind of doing that to him, like, come on, let's mix it up, And I wanted to, I knew Mario was better than me, and I wanted to feel it. I wanted to feel that technique that he had over me. And he didn't do it. And I actually talked to Mario during the fight. I actually told Mario in the fight, hey, dude, you're better than me. If you do this, it's going to be like this the whole time. Let's move. Let's do something. And he goes, you're too dangerous, my friend.
Okay.
And so, that fight, of course, he controlled me 100%. I was able to, throw him off towards the end and got real sloppy because I just was getting desperate with trying to take him down, get some. I was just pushing his head, trying to shoot for tackles that weren't even there, So it was, for me, it was like, wow. Egan was into jiu-jitsu. Egan looked at me and says, after the fight, he goes, welcome to the world of jiu-jitsu. And I was like, if that's what jiu-jitsu is, I don't ever want to do jiu-jitsu again.
That was frustrating fight. I was just going to say, the throw he attempted at the beginning on Sperry is a complicated. I think you had, both his arms with you tried that judo throw over the back. And yeah, Sperry kind of crushed you and was on top. And then from there, Sperry is very frustrating too, because he's also calm. So like, he doesn't look like he's spending a lot of energy, and Enson's like a ball of energy under him. And the other guy's like, literally, he'll pass guard and lay with you cheek to cheek. You know what I mean? It's so you can see when he got up, his shots were desperate at the end, but it was out of frustration, I thought.
But you know what? That's so much compliment to me that someone, the legend as good as Mario Sperry, considered me dangerous. I mean, that's like 100% complimenting me. So it kind of flattering, frustrating, but kind of flattering in a way that, wow, Mario Sperry thought I was too dangerous,
Yeah, that's cool. Now, how you want to talk a little bit about Egan's experience over there? Because Egan had like a major run at Abu Dhabi too. Like he beat Renzo Gracie. He beat Saulo Ribeiro, I think. And
that's crazy.
And lost to Kareem Barklev, who's a savage. So do you remember that? Were you cornering him, or were you concentrating on your own fight?
Yeah, I think John Lewis was cornering him, but I was in the stands watching.
Okay. How'd that feel? How does it feel to see your brother compete like that?
That was awesome, man. The biggest thing that stood out in me was after he beat Renzo, and Gracie tried to pick a fight with us.
Yeah.
And Guy Nevins, the promoter for Abu Dhabi, he comes up to me and says, if Hyen punches you, don't punch him back. I'm like, fuck that.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
He says that in Abu Dhabi, it doesn't matter who started the fight, both people will be put in jail. And I said, well, you know what? It's your job as a promoter to control that shit. I said, you know what? If you're gonna put that shit on me and say that if Hyen punches me, don't punch him back, I'm going on the next plane home. Fuck you. Fuck super fight. And he freaked out. Guy was like, man, wait a minute. Like, he went and talked to Renzo. Renzo came and brought Hyen to the room and made us squash it, which was really cool of Renzo. We went in there. We said, okay. He was pissed off that Renzo lost, and it was like, okay, it's a sport, blah blah blah. Shook hands and it was done. But I remember I almost left saying, you know what, if I'm gonna have to not take a punch from somebody and not punch him back, I'm out of here, man. If you're not gonna do your job as a promoter, say goodbye to your fucking super fight.
To counter that, like a couple nights in jail, you'd be fine.
No, it's 3 months.
Oh, is it?
Like, remember, it's a 3 month, like, you don't.
Wow.
It's like an automatic sentence or a minimum of something like that. So, because we had that every year we were there, we heard the same thing. It actually, I know Guy, and I think Guy was, there's obviously, you're all hyped up and there's a lot of emotion. And I think he was trying to give you good advice. It's like, if Ryan punches you, he's going to jail, and you calm down so you don't go to jail. But I understand where you're coming from, because it's like, how are you going to ask me not to punch this guy? You know what I mean?
You know what? In my knowledge and my maturity now today, I probably would be like, oh, good advice. Okay, I'll stay away from him. If he does, I'll make sure I don't punch him back. But I'm a freaking little hot young piston. All about ego and got too much ego in me. Got a journal in and saying, "Fuck that! You telling me not to punch a guy?" It was just a bad time for timing wise, as far as for Guy Niven to tell me that. He did give me the best advice. So today would probably be good advice for me not to do that. I probably wouldn't. I would be able to refrain from it.
Did Sakurai's manager help line that up with you guys?
Who lined that up? No, I don't know. I think the Sheik himself got in touch with us.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I was hoping you were going to say yes, because it would make this next question not seem so shoehorned in, but I have to ask it. Did you ever threaten to throw Sakurai's manager off like a second story or down the stairs of a place?
No, I think that might be a story being mixed up with another person.
You didn't make him take his shoes off?
Yeah, that's not. I don't think it wasn't Sakurai's manager. It was one of Sakurai's sponsors. He used to give protein to Sakurai, and I didn't threaten. I tried to throw him off.
Okay.
He resisted.
It was in the. It was. I apologize. It was at Korakuen Hall in the staircase.
Yeah.
I think it was the same night that Kid Yamamoto fought Khalid Mitchell. Was that it?
I'm not sure, but what happened with that is I'm all about loyalty. And this guy, his name is Kawabe. He, one of my big sponsors, he was working under my sponsor. They had a big problem with each other, a big court case. And I'm not the type of guy to be friends with two sides if they're having a little war going on. So I had to pick and choose. So I called Kawabe and I told him that, hey, you're having a problem with my friend Nakano. Until you guys get shit settled, I can't be your friend. And he said, okay. Well, at that event, he came to shake my hand. He came to shake my hand in front of everybody. I'm like, dude.
I told you.
What did I fucking tell you, So I grabbed him by the neck. I dragged him to the back, and I was, don't ask me what I was thinking. I mean, I was going to throw him off I think it was the 4th floor.
Chris, I made a mistake on the floor too. It's just
Kid Yamamoto was with me. And I remember him grabbing onto Kawabe's leg so Kawabe wouldn't fall over. And it was so frustrating for me because I had a hard time throwing him over with his resistance and Kid holding onto him. I couldn't throw him over. So I did the next best thing was I made him take off his shoes. In Japan, to be barefooted onto the ground and to lay your forehead into the ground, apologize, is the lowest point of throwing your pride and your ego out the window. So I made him do that. Was the only thing I could think of that if I couldn't throw him off the 4th floor. Yeah, it wasn't his manager. It was his sponsors.
So probably best that you did that because you got your honor right. Plus, you didn't get murder charges, so it was probably also the best.
Yeah,
a little bit more than 3 months.
Thank you, Kid Yamamoto helped you out.
Yeah, no shit. No shit, man.
It's kind of scary when your whole, you're hinging on Kid Yamamoto being the guy with a cool head.
The voice of reason.
That's true. No shit.
So, Enson, all right. So, for instance, you don't want to get involved until these two are cool. Then we'll be friends. The person on the other side of that issue, when he gets the phone calls and he's being told what took place between you two, I tell you what, man, that guy, if you guys, I mean, were this close at that point, afterward, I mean, there was no doubt in your loyalty to that man whatsoever. That's for sure.
Can I jump in? Because there's one more Abu Dhabi question I want to ask you.
Please do.
You, I want to talk about, he's a phenom, he was under you, that's Barrett. He had a real rivalry with Hoyler, where he lost to Hoyler the first year and he was real young and he came back, and every time he came back, his level went doop and jumped and jumped. And then in the finals, another frustrating moment happened where Barrett was ready to fight Hoyler, and in the finals, you start points right away. So he sits down and says, come on, Hoyler, come into my guard. At the point he sat down, he lost the point. He's at -1. And Hoyler looked at him with Hoyler looks at him with 18 minutes left in the match and goes, you just gave me the fight. And he stalled the rest of the fight. Like, how does that make you feel, like, especially with you who idolize jiu-jitsu? Now they're rivals, man. That had to make you feel hot.
Yeah, well, Barrett's like a little brother, yeah. So I'm on his side no matter what, you know. So yeah, you know, it wasn't, you know, it was the way Barrett was, you know. He's like a freaking warrior too, man. He fights that way. So it's for him to like say fuck the points, come into my guard, bro. You know,
Sure,
big mistake, but you know, it just shows his warriorness, yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. And Barrett, you know, was a legend by the time in Abu Dhabi 2003 that Hoyler lost. It was actually supposed to be Barrett or Leo, like one of those guys that beat him, you know, because Hoyler was starting to fade. But Barrett was one of the top guys in the world in those era of competition for sure.
And still is today, isn't that unreal?
Yep, out of control.
Barrett's savage.
Unbelievable.
Enson, what was your experience like training with Phil Baroni?
It was good. He was he knew the right things to say during the training. He would push me to a point where I was almost thinking I was gonna die in the training. He helped me train for one of my fights. I actually flew him over. We did a lot of sparring, you know, boxing, and then did a lot of circuit training with the weights. He was a super good training coach, a partner. Real intense, as you probably know.
Yeah, we get some people that really like him and some people that say things about him that are mind-blowing.
You already like him or you fucking hate the guy, you know?
Yeah.
I suggest everybody, if they want that latter portion, listen to the Stephan Bonner interview that we did.
You know what? You know what's funny though? I know Phil, like people don't know Phil, so you know, I can see the really good things about him. But you know what? The guys who hate him and think he's a dick, I can understand it. He does things that makes him look like a dick. So he does dick shit, you know. So people calling him a dick is, I won't fight that. I'll say, yeah, well, I agree with that. But I like Phil. He's like a little brother. He's like a little brother to me, man. You know, out of control sometimes, but fucking Phil, man.
Yeah, he was in Japan for like every 3 weeks for a while, fighting in Prejudice Shooto. He really should have just moved there. You know, I think had he done that, they would have been a little better with the matchmaking with him as well. You know, they matched him really hard. He has the
style that the Japanese people love. He has that brawl style that, you know, street fight style that Japanese people love.
So for Pride 5, this is where things kind of get interesting with you. April 29th, 1999. You're originally supposed to fight Mark Kerr. It gets canceled. Do you recall why?
Yeah, because he had surgery on his elbow, I think it was.
Okay. Then they line you up with Ogawa. That gets canceled.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember why that gets canceled?
No, I don't remember what that happened with that.
Ogawa. So I have to assume it's a last-minute replacement. They give him a traditional martial art guy with like those like amazing karate pants on, like with, they're not bell bottoms, but it's like a bell bottom all the way like up and down when you fight Sochi Nishida. So it's, and you're, you know, you crossed over into Pride now. So now you're, you know, dealing with them.
Well, you know what happened with that fight is when I got, you know, I hear a lot of stuff that Pride really bullied some of the fighters around, but I was on the other spectrum. They didn't dare do shit with me. So what was interesting about that fight was that when Mark Kerr's fight got canceled, it was about 2 weeks into the 2 weeks before the fight. And when Sakaki Bada personally came to my gym to tell me that he had to cancel the fight because Mark Kerr pulled out. So I told him, you know, it's fine. I said, but I still expect my fight money. And at the time, I was getting paid $80,000 for the fight.
Ooh.
And I said, I expect you guys to pay me for my fight. He looked at me like, what the fuck? You're not going to even fight. I said, I understand you're a promoter, but as us fighters, I'm tapering my training right now. All the work's 90% of my work's done. The ring, the event is the fun part. And you're going to tell me I got to do 90% of my work and I'm not getting paid? Well, at least give me 90% of my fight money. And he goes, but Enson, unless you fight, it does nothing for us. I said, I understand that's your view, but you got to understand my view. So I gave Sakaki by the bottom line. I said, if you don't get me another fighter, I told him, you're paying me my fight money. So he ran around, and that's how he got that Nishida, the karate guy, yeah?
That's
So
why
that's
he's like,
that fight team.
Enson's like Obi-Wan Kenobi with the Jedi mind trick, like, you will pay me my fight money. I will pay you your fight money.
So prior to this interview starting, like I was obviously not aware of that, how that took place. I had explained to Enson, hey, you know, just sometimes people kind of like to wade into deep waters to where whatever might take place on the independent circuit, you had no problem applying that same type of attitude and methodology to, you know, the much bigger players. Obviously, this is a shining example of that. And I mean, it's, dude, this fight's amazing. It's only like 24 seconds. You guys, at some point, this podcast is going to get big. And if we were to, like, when you get on the UFC Fight Pass, to give you like the hot fights that everyone's watching, and it's always a Nate Diaz, it's always Khabib. This dude with boobs and karate pants, this is the one that I would tell our audience, you need to watch it just to kind of push it up there to knock out a Khabib Nurmagomedov fight, because it's amazing. It's 24 seconds of greatness. Anyway,
Hey,
Pride Grand Prix.
Wait, hold on. I got a question though, because we're friends with Mark, but Mark, you know, there are times there's a subject Mark doesn't like to talk about. That's that Takada fight. And he says it is what it is, and that's his official line about it. But what's your take on that? Was that some
Coleman Takada fight?
You know, Coleman against Takada? Because, you know, body language says a lot. And Mark, I don't know. I don't know that I feel like Mark was trying.
What are your thoughts? All I know from that is I'm not 100% sure, but I know Coleman made a comment in some type of interview that I gotta feed my family, which tells a lot. Mark, from Mark's fight, what I understood with Mark's fight was, I think they agree. I think Takada asked him not to hit him on the ground. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Nah, the armbar wasn't even in. You know, I mean, Takada was like a make-believe character that was taking fights in between actual warriors. And I'm not saying that he wasn't like incredibly advanced. I know he was an Olympian. But you know,
isn't that frustrating that he becomes a spokesman for Pride, and then in Rising he's like one of the men that come out and you know, to ask people like, you know, are you a man? Are you a man? It's like, I remember telling people, like, the press is like, that's the fucking least piece of man that you can get, saying, asking another guy if you're a man. You know, you guys, there's a story behind me and Takada. Yeah, we're okay now, but there's a story why I really despise him. Not just because he fought rules that are different from us in our ring, but because there was a time on the street when Takada got, and he was with a rugby player, a national representative for Japan rugby player. They're at a club, and all my students were doing security at the club, and he got into, there was a ruckus upstairs, and I thought, oh, I better check on my students, make sure they're okay. I know a lot of the gangsters. I know a lot of the underworld. So I knew if there's an underworld problem, I could get involved in it. And so I went upstairs and I saw a bunch of kids just beating up somebody. And it was like a swarm of bees going across the street as they were punching this guy. And I was like, oh, what's going on? I looked, my two students were there. They were staying away. Okay, you guys are cool. So I'm looking at them. As I'm watching the gangsters, I'm like, oh, I know those guys. Those are like these, they're called Canto Rengo. They're already considered a mafia group right now, but they're like gangsters. It's young kids that just beat people up and just go crazy. I mean, and when I followed that whole thing, I wanted to watch because it was interesting. So I went and followed it, watched it. And then it went to the back where the guy was on the ground getting pummeled. And I noticed there was a big guy screaming on the side, stop it, stop it, stop it. Don't do that, stop it. When I walked over to watch the thing, I got over there, the rugby guy got up and started running, and they chased him. And as they chased him, that big guy that was screaming ran by me, and it was Takada. And he looked over at me and he goes, Enson, stop them. They're crazy. They're going to kill us. And the first thing in my head was like, if my friend was in danger, whether you're talking about a mob gang or Yakuzas or 20 people against one, I'm going to help my friend. If I'm going to get beaten up with my friend, so be it. Takada would not lay a hand on these guys. Takada just screamed. He wouldn't touch them because he knew if he touched them, he would get involved. So I go in there and I start pulling these guys off, and they know me. So I'm pulling them off, and I'm thinking in my head, I can kill two birds with one stone. I can help Takada, and I can have these guys, and I'm putting them in their car and telling them the police are coming. Get out of here. Get out of here. So I put one guy in. I go back for another guy. As I'm getting the other guy's coming out of the car, running back in. It's getting helpless to a point where I kept trying to get them out, and finally they heard the sirens. They all ran, jumped in the car, and took off. Takada disappeared from that whole place. Not a single word of thank you. Not a single word of Enson, thank you for helping me. Nothing from him at all. So for like 8 years, and then people asked me about Takada. I told him he's a pussy. He's like the worst excuse for a man. I told him the truth, and he knew that, he heard that. And when my fighter started fighting and rising, he's going to be there. And I thought to myself, if that guy comes and shakes my hand, I'm going to look at him and laugh and walk away, and that would cause real bad energy and real bad rifts and rising. So I thought, we got to hash this out. So I asked Sakakibara, I said, can you set up a meeting with me and Takada? And I don't know if he was afraid that something was going to happen, or he was lazy about it. He never did. We eventually met Takada at a radio station, a TV station. He unexpectedly pops his head in our room, says, "Oh, they say in Japanese, yoroshiku onegaishimasu." He's like, thank you for working with me. And I look at it and said, shit, it's Takada. So I took that opportunity to look at Takada and say, hey, Takada, we need to talk. And he looked at me and goes, oh, okay, later. He left the room, and about half an hour later, he calls me to the room. One of the ladies come in and calls me to the room and says that he wants to talk. So I walk in there. He just got off knee surgery. He's sitting down and he goes, Enson, what's up? And I said, what do you mean, what's up? I said, what's up. He looked at me like he made his best, he don't know what's going on face. And I said, the place where he had that incident was Nishizabu. And I said, Nishizabu. He looked at me and goes, huh? I said, you remember Nishizabu? What happened to you and Nishizabu? He goes, yes. I said, well, I helped you in that. And I didn't get a word of thank you. And then he said, oh, it was you. It was you. I didn't know it was you. And, old me would have slapped him and said, you fucking liar. But, the mature me kind of realized that the objective of this whole thing is to smash this whole thing. Yeah. So I said, and he started apologizing. I'm sorry, I didn't know it was you. And I was like, okay, you know what? He might be bullshitting because he's trying to save face, but he's apologizing. Let's smash it. So I shook his hand. It's all okay now. So that's the story behind Takada, but that doesn't take away that he did have some weird fights in Pride.
Okay. Well, I would also counter,
awesome.
He may have been a black belt in judo, but his verbal judo was less than acceptable.
I told those guys to get off. He said, please stop.
Yeah. His verbal judo, not effective. So,
no, but to be like, from reputation, at least from what we knew over in the States, Takada was a big deal, though. Like, to face him down, you may be running a little bit of risk there. How do you feel that? And then
a big deal in pro wrestling.
Okay. That's understandable, because he was a big star with that, and that you're right. So okay, cool. I understand.
So there was an article written, I think it's Bleacher Report, about title belts and their value. And I'm not mean like dollar value. I meant like, it's written of what title belts are worth the most. And the number one that came in, it was a pro wrestling, MMA, anything with the title, took place January 30th, 2000. The Pride Grand Prix belt is regarded as the toughest, baddest tournament ever. You fought in it. Your first round opponent was 14-0 Mark Kerr. Not an easy draw.
Yeah, Mark Kerr, Pride asked me to fight in the Grand Prix. And I told them that the only time I would fight in the Grand Prix is if I could fight Mark Kerr first round and hoist Gracie second round. So I asked for that.
I love it.
Requested Mark Kerr, kind of uneventful, but Mark worked his butt off. I mean, I think you guys fought for 15 minutes.
Yeah. I mean, he was probably the physically strongest person I've ever faced. He had enough technique to prevent me from doing any sweeps. He couldn't pass my guard, but still he had those little small punches from the top. Of course, it's gonna be a little damaging. I got hit a lot in that fight, so I mean, he beat me. I got caught in the hype because I remember him saying that he would stand toe to toe with me. So stupid me is thinking that we're gonna throw toe to toe and not even prepared for the shot. And you saw what happened. He just took me down with no problem and just stayed on top of me and small punches and create enough damage to convincingly win the fight.
What kind of relationship do you think Mark Kerr and Saki Kibara had at that time?
I don't know. I think from what I hear Saki Kibara did a little bit of bullying on Mark Kerr. I don't think they treated him too well. I mean, I have a podcast too that I do, and I just did one with Rampage, and from what I hear, Rampage also wasn't treated too well by Pride. And I'm like, Pride wouldn't do anything wrong to me. And I told Rampage, shit, man, if you should have just told me, I could have straightened all that up. It's like, it's wild, man. Yeah. So I don't know what the relationship he had with Mark Kerr and Pride, but I don't think it was that good.
No.
He was at that point still not beginning his slide. He was still like at the top of his game and stuff. Is that something that like later on in year, like you saw him like a shadow of it? Like, how did that feel? Like I know the fight game is a fight game, but you got him at his peak, and then after that, he was just nothing. Like, is that bad?
I was super stoked about that. I mean, I'm glad I got to fight Mark Kerr at his best. I mean, it wouldn't be anything saying that I beat Mark Kerr when he was on his slide. He was still at the top, and to fight Mark Kerr and to feel his energy and his ferocity was something that I wanted to do. So I was super happy about that.
Cool. All right, so we're talking about Japan. Let me just kind of move to Hawaii for a little bit. Chris Brennan, we just had him on. We did a multi-part series with him in regards to his career. He had mentioned to us that there was a time where he had a couple guys on the card. They asked him to referee. It was with one of your guys. They believed that the fight may have been stopped early. The guys from the corner were getting pretty rowdy with them. He goes to the hotel. They're surrounding the hotel, threatening him. He has to call you in Japan. Before I finish his version of the story, I think I'd like to hear yours.
Well, I remember him telling me about that when I met him in Hawaii just recently. And I think he said he had to thank me for literally saving his life. And man, things like that happen to me. My life is like a movie. And so for me, it was really vague. I mean, I remember something like that. And I remember the guys that wanted to get him was guys that I knew, or actually guys that were kind of under me, sort of. So it was a phone call. It was easy to stop. So
now, according to him, he said that he talks to you and says, look, I need you to stop these guys. And you go, send me the video and I'll see. You have to verify. Yes, it was a good stoppage. And then you go, okay. And you called the guy and said, okay, it was a good stoppage. Leave him alone. Do you remember that? Like, if it was a bad stoppage, you're on your own, buddy. But it was a good stoppage. Okay, well, I'll help you.
Good luck.
Well, I'm about doing what's right, and if he deserves it, he deserves it. But if he doesn't deserve it, I'll do what I can to stop it, And if it was a bad stoppage, man, I would have probably told him, hey, Chris, bro, you're on your own, man. It was a bad stoppage.
Yeah, I put a wig on, my man.
Figure it out. That's funny. I love that story.
So Enson, we've had a couple people on that we put in a category of the greatest fighter never to win a world title. Gray Maynard, a lot of people say that about. We made the argument with Pedro Hizo that it could be him. And if you were to kind of rewind the conversation a little prior to that, or at least, I'm not even gonna say prior because Hizo was right there. Igor Vovchanchyn can also be put into that category. Never a world champion, but somebody that absolutely could fought at that level. That's your next opponent at Pride 10, August 27th, 2000. Igor's 42-3-1. I think he had 36 straight knockouts.
Wow.
And that's your next opponent.
The reason why I asked to fight Igor was because prior to my fight, I remember sitting in the arena watching him fight Francisco Bueno. And the way he knocked out Francisco Bueno, one punch, his eyes rolled back, and on the way down, he hit Francis with another hook. I remember sitting in the third row of the fight, and his wife or girlfriend was near in that area we were fighting, and he took a while to get up. So she was like, thought he was dead. She started screaming, and just that whole atmosphere for me, I was like, man, I had this weird, stupid desire to be at the end of those punches.
I'll tell you what.
I thought I want to fight Igor. This guy is just too fucking scary. I want to fight this guy. I want to feel what it is. I want to see what my spirit and my mind will do and my heart will do in the midst of the fire. You know, will I pussy out? Will I have to learn how to get stronger? Will I show myself that I'm a stronger person than I thought? You know, it was just intriguing to me to put myself in that test. That was another test that I felt intrigued to feel and experience.
Bro, I wish they still made people like that anymore. They don't make them like that. They're out there, man. Find me one. I don't see them.
So Chris,
no, for sure.
Enson, Chris, here it is. Igor Vovchanchyn, I got a jiu-jitsu guy, good striker, but somebody with a lot of submissions on his record. This dude's coming to take me down. And pre-fight interview, Enson saying, no, I'm going to swing with you. And Igor's like, oh, okay. All right. I got 36 knockouts on my record. All right. You're going to swing with me. Oh, okay. Enson went out there and started going balls to the wall, almost closing Igor's left eye. And Igor was just like, wait a minute. This is actually happening? And it was like a tornado. It was kind of like the Tasmanian devil, like how he kicks up all that dirt. That's how Igor Vovchanchyn was fighting when he realized that this friggin' just animal across from him is willing to trade with him.
Well, the victory was mine because he ended up throwing me on the ground and jumping in my guard.
He did.
Right? He was supposed to be the striker. But something real deep in that fight that it was one of my best fights. I got probably the most injured I've ever been, but in that fight, I conquered a situation that I consider a situation where you grow as a man. You grow in your heart and your strength and your spirit. So I call those moments a Yamato Damashi moment. And it's a moment in your life where you're hit with a situation that you really don't think you can do it. And you think that I can't do this, but you do. And to explain that situation, if you look at the fight, my whole thing was I knew he thought he was going to take him down. So my whole thing was to fake a tackle and come up with strikes. And when I did that, I hit him with that first right, but then I believe every man in the ring has fear. So what you do with the fear. Fear can be your worst enemy or your greatest foe. And if you let fear overtake you and control you, it'll be your worst enemy. And at that split second after that punch, fear took over. And I grabbed Igor. I tried to clinch with him. He tried to pull away. I tried to clinch. And for me, it felt like a 15-second battle inside. Of course, it probably was only a couple seconds, but for me, it was that thing. Like I didn't want to strike with him anymore. I felt that fear in him. Remembering Francisco Bueno getting knocked out cold, that fear. And it was a little battle in me that, I mean, what are you going to do? Are you going to push through this fear? Are you going to work it? Are you going to break to the fear? And that's when I let go and we just started throwing down. And for me, it was a huge accomplishment. I was at the verge of saying, you know what? I don't want to do this. I want to grab him and take him down. And I won that battle. For me, it was huge. It was super huge for me to actually work through that. I mean, if you watch the fight again, watch that. There's a split second when I try and grab him. And people will just forget that whole thing because they remember the brawl. But for me, it's a defining point in my life. It's a defining point in my manhood that meant a lot to me. Yeah.
Enson, it sounds to me like you talked about one of your fights earlier. Mike did about 24 seconds, beautiful. Which those fights, don't get me wrong, those fights are cool, but I don't see that being something that does it for you. I think you'd rather. It doesn't do it for you unless you have to face some adversity and come out a stronger person. Like those fights where you have to dig deep. Like, yeah, I'd rather have a 3-round war than a 30-second knockout. Those are cool and all, but I mean, it means way more to you mentally and spiritually to actually go through some adversity and you learn more about yourself.
Yeah. So that fight, it was.
You also wore gi pants.
Yeah, I was actually from Stefan Kotros. He actually suggested that to me in a fight interview, saying that Igor doesn't understand the ground. So if you have more grip on your arm bars or triangles, if you get them in a lock. And I said, oh, that makes sense because Igor wouldn't know how to use the gi. He wouldn't know how to grab the gi and use my legs. So I thought, yeah, that's actually a good idea. So the day before the fight, I decided to wear the gi pants.
Just for quick reference, Chris, your coach Jason Godsey, he got roughed up by Francisco Bueno in Brazil. And when Bueno fought Igor Vovchanchyn, I had the exact same reaction as Bueno's girlfriend. I was like, oh, he's dead. He's dead.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
It was scary how he didn't move.
He knocked him out.
Is the worst.
Yeah, just so people can understand, he knocks up Francisco Bueno on his feet. As Francisco Bueno is falling like a tree, he gets like 3 or 4 more savage punches and like he maybe woke him up and put him asleep, woke him up and put him asleep. Like it's like he knocked him out like 4 times in one exchange.
And Francisco Bueno's a big boy.
I remember him.
Yeah.
He's a big boy.
And he was the highlight reel for Pride for about the next 4 years. It was every time people turn on Pride. All right, here we go. I got a couple other questions. Enson, I kind of go through people's lives like psychotic ex-girlfriends. So we're going to divert from the fights a little bit, and I'm going to get into your other activity that I truly enjoy, actually more so than talking about your fights. In Tokyo, the Killer Bee Gym, Ijai owned it. You guys had a bit of a disagreement about money. Would you mind telling our audience what took place between you two?
Ig.
He was the
leader for a Yakuza group, and him and another Yakuza guy used to train at my gym, and they wanted to open up a gym. So I told them if they want to open up a gym, I'll let them use my Purebred name if they hire 2 of my fighters. So they hired Kid Yamamoto, and they hired Ryan Bull. So those 2 fighters were my students, and they were working under me at they called it Purebred Tokyo Killer Bee. So AG gets all involved, and Nori becomes Kid becomes a big star. I left AG in charge of Kid because I had some other stuff to do, and I noticed that Kid was getting a little bit out of hand with his stuff he's doing. So I told AG that, he has to meet up with Kid, straighten him out. He never did. He never did straighten him out. And it came to a point, wasn't about money at all. It came to a point where he started avoiding my phone calls because he was afraid of me getting angry at him. And he avoided my phone calls, avoided me. And when Kid won the Heroes event, and I think he beat Genki Sudo.
Wow.
I remember watching TV, and I saw AG in the ring. This hiding from me. He's in the ring in national TV, So I decided to go down to the after party and drag him out of the party and give him my 2 cents. And we did. We went down. I was going to go in there and just grab him out of the party and drag him out, but my students thought that it might be better if I just do it more subtly. So they went down and asked him to come out. He came out and pretty much beat him up for 20 minutes in a park. Is that what the story you're asking about?
Yes, that is actually.
So I beat him up, and the word got around. The word got around that I was going to beat him up because I guess some of the guys that knew I was going to go down to find him started calling around. And, it's crazy. The underground grapevine is super fast. So I had about 3 guys from the Chinese mafia that are my good friends came down. And at the end of the beating, one of his guys, the higher up guys, came down and they came out of the park. They came out of the bushes, pissed off. I later found out a couple years later they had sticks in their pants, but I never knew then. They came up and they started screaming. The Chinese guys went and stopped them. I called them off and I said, hey, let me talk to them. So what I told the Yakuza guys is that if somebody fucked you over and you only did 20% of what you really wanted to do, wouldn't you think that's nice? And they looked at me and they pointed to AJ and he was all bloody. He was still standing. I knocked him down about 3 times, but stood him back up. But he was still standing. He was a little wobbly, but he was still okay. And the guys look at me and I said, but look what you did to him. And I said, well, I've been beating him for 20 minutes. I said, how long, if I wanted to kill him, how long you think I would kill him? And they looked at me and I said, I only did 20%, man. And that head guy, just his whole demeanor changed. And he went, wow, you know what, man? Can you leave him alone? And if he ever fucks you over again, I'll kill him myself. And I was like, I'm done. I got my shit done. He took his punishment. I'm good. And that's what happened. I'm still actually in a relationship with that guy, Hasegawa, his higher up.
You guys exchanged cell phone numbers that day. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we became friends. He took us out to dinner. He's a pretty big time guy in the Yakuza world.
All right. So outside of your career, all right, Enson, I must admit, we are big tinfoil hat people. We love MMA conspiracy, like on this podcast. We really enjoy it. So we had Dennis Kang on, and I think you might know about this. You obviously were not involved, so we just kind of want your opinion. So Dennis Kang fights in Pride Bushido 14. He beats Akihiro Gono to get to the finals. He's from Gerbaka Dojo. Gono, obviously you know that. The controversy therein lies where Paulo Filho dominates Kazu Misaki and Paulo Filho advances. Paulo Filho says, yeah, I'm kind of injured, even though I don't think, Wanderlei Silva was online stating nothing was wrong with him. Rather than putting the alternative bout into the finals with Dennis Kang had like a severe, I think he tore his bicep off and goes into the finals expecting to see the alternate bout, but instead they put Misaki, who's also from Gerbaka Dojo, into the finals.
I remember that.
Is there any shenanigans in regards to it? Because like on a surface level, it's as plain as day. They see Dennis Kang injured. They grab a guy that lost. I was under the impression maybe they told, Paulo Filho, sit back. We got a wounded duck in the finals. The guy that you just beat is taking your spot.
I don't know was there actually a reserve match?
Yes, it was Hector Lombard and, wait a minute. I think it was Hector Lombard. Shit. I know Lombard was on there. Yeah, I don't have it in front of me.
I honestly don't know if there was anything involved in that conspiracy, but I wouldn't put it by them. Okay, let me tell you something that's totally raw that you guys it's gonna blow. I mean, it's really wild. It's about Rising. Okay. Sakakibara himself,
new organization.
Before my student Yoshi fights this guy Miyamoto. Have you guys seen that fight?
Not familiar.
No. Okay, it's going to be even more funny when I tell you the results. But anyway, Sakakibara comes up goes to my student Tsuyoshi and tells them that, this guy Miyamoto is just a pro wrestler. He's a big boy, but he's no good. So don't finish him. Prolong the fight to make more of a show. And I looked at my student came and told me, I said, what the fuck is he talking about? This is a real fight. You're gonna finish as fast as you can. Sakakibara actually comes up to me at the ring warm-ups and tells me, oh, you know what? This guy's not good. You know, it might be good for, you know, to have more ring time in the ring for Tsuyoshi. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I went back to the locker room and I told Tsuyoshi that, you know, hey, do what you got to do, man. Just don't ignore what he said. That makes no sense. Tsuyoshi finished them in 7 seconds. So you know, like, you know, so that, with that said, you know, for him to tell me something like that, I don't put anything by them, you know.
Hey, you know what you could have said if he said, what happened? I said, hey, he could have finished him in 4. We carried him for 3 seconds, man.
Maybe an extra 3.
They didn't dare shit to me. Do you know that? Did you guys know what happened between me and Guy Menzer in the Pride ring?
No.
Was this with the Shamrock incident?
No.
No,
My brother fought Guy.
Egan.
I actually just retired right after that. And my brother fights Guy. Guy beats Egan. And when I go into the ring to check on Egan, Guy comes up to me, being a good guy, and he tells me, hey, Enson, remember, what I do from now isn't personal. And I'm like, what do you mean? You beat Egan, it ain't personal, it's cool. You're a better fighter tonight. Good, cool. He goes, no. What I gotta say in the ring? I'm like, what are you gonna say? Because I gotta challenge you in a bad way. And like if you watch the tape on that, I'm shaking his hand and I won't let go of his hand. I'm kind of guiding him to the corner. I'm telling Guy, I said, you know, I'm fucking retired. And he goes, yeah, but hey, it was in our contract. If I beat Egan, I got to call you out in a bad way. So I told Guy, bro, I said, if you don't want to fucking do it, don't do it. And he goes, Enson, I can't, I got in the contract. It was an agreement. And then it dawned on me that, you know, the foreign fighters are in a different position, that, you know, I can see them doing that to him and putting Guy in a position. I didn't want Guy to be in that bad position. So I just kind of said, fuck, do what you got to do. And I left. And what happened was this Guy personally told me it was Sakakibara that told him that. And so Guy decides to tone it down. And he said, you know, I beat Egan, but the guy I really want to fight is Enson. So he made it really nice, which is cool. Guy came into the locker room after to tell me, Enson, hey, sorry, man, but it was in my contract. And I asked him who said it. And he said Sakakibara himself. So I get pissed off. I'm in the locker room now. And I'm already, you know, these little, if you fought in Japan there, Chris, there's these guys that have the little earphones that call you out to the fights. Mm-hmm. So I start scaring those guys, telling them to get Mauricio Chacho. This is when Mauricio was still alive. Get Mauricio Chacho in here to right now. And it's the middle of the event, so of course he can't come. So I'm creating a big scene. I'm kicking these guys in the ass. They're running out. They're running out, sending another guy. I'm scaring that guy. He's running out. Finally, they send the matchmaker over, this guy, Kawasaki. So I grab Kawasaki. I throw him to the ground. I raise my hand like I'm going to hit him. And I tell him that you bring fucking one of the top who made that decision near now. He runs out of there. Sakakibara comes in. So I sit down with Sakakibara and I tell him, hey, so what the fuck's going on with this bullshit? He goes, Enson, we don't know who did it. Someone in the office did it. Someone in the office. I'll find out who it is for you. And I already heard from Guy that it was Sakakibara.
Yeah.
So for me, it was more like, I know the colors of these guys, you know. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's going to be funny if Sakakibara sees this video and he's going to be like, holy shit, Enson knows. But, you know, it's like, I don't put it by anything. So eventually, you know, Sakakibara wanted to meet me to apologize. And I'm like pissed off telling my students, yeah, I'll just go meet him. If this fucker doesn't give me at least $5 grand, I'm going to fucking throw the money back in his face. He comes up to me, apologizes, hands me an envelope, and it's weighed a shitload over $5 grand. So it was actually 20 grand cash, yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so he apologized, and and, you know, I was like, you know, okay, I'll take your apology, but at least inside I knew what kind of guy he was, you know.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, apology accepted. 20,000 is a good.
I would say, you know,
yeah. Hats off to Guy, hats off to Guy for, being a class act about it. Guy thought I knew. So Guy thought I knew about it, like a pro wrestling thing.
I can see that.
Yeah, he was telling you, I mean, Guy did the right thing too,
Miguel, I got this.
So the Dennis Kang thing, I wouldn't be surprised if they wanted Misaki to have a better chance because they thought he could beat him. I wouldn't be surprised if they might have paid Filio to not fight. I can't say they did it, but I wouldn't put anything by these guys.
All right. So for instance, Pride unravels. Okay. Pride unravels. And during the unraveling, did anybody actually go to jail?
No.
So a bad newspaper article takes down this monstrous organization called Pride, okay, which was selling out 80,000 seat venues. So, here, you guys want to talk about cancel culture? Pride got canceled. Those people took that organization from us. So Pride gets canceled. No one goes to prison. Sakakibara is kind of like the phoenix. Every single time you think he's dead, he rises from the flames. And what he does is he meets with Dana White in Vegas prior to COVID. And Dana White, on his own social media, said, got some interesting things we're working on, and texted and sent the picture of both him and Sakakibara over lunch. COVID hits, whatever was discussed doesn't take place. And I don't think Japan is allowing foreigners in right now because of COVID. What did you hear that may have been discussed that day?
No, what I heard about that was all I heard. I didn't hear anything about what was discussed, but all I heard was that I know a guy that brought Sakakibara into. His name is Kanta. He's the one who flew Sakakibara into private jet. But he told me that they went to Floyd Mayweather's house to talk to Floyd about him fighting. And Floyd just surprised Sakakibara by calling Dana over.
Really?
That's what I know, and that's all I know. What if that ended up into a conversation about something? I don't know. I mean, it would be awesome if something happens like that, but I don't know. Only Dana and Sakakibara, I don't know if anything was talked about. But yeah, that's how it happened. So Sakakibara didn't go to meet Dana. He went to see Floyd, and Floyd called Dana over.
That's fantastic.
Hey, that reminds me now, just your opinion. Floyd actually did his last performance in Japan against, like, he was a young, like, phenom kickboxer, but he was actually even too small for Floyd. And it turned into something that probably really damaged his career. How does someone like you, who's like so fight oriented, look at a circus like that? Like, what are your thoughts? How'd that go over in Japan?
I don't know. I'm against that kind of stuff. I like the fights to be, I don't even know if that was real. Just,
Hippo eyes. I looked at it with hippo eyes.
As much as as long as I've been into fighting, the punches that Floyd hit him with, I didn't think would rock him that much. But, I noticed it was on the tempo. So maybe I'm just not that aware about tempo shots. But it was a little weird. The kid had no chance. He's boxing with the best boxer in the world. And I think it was just a thing to bring Floyd in and try to create something going with Floyd, which didn't work out. But I'm a hypocrite in a way because I don't like those circus fights, but I did enjoy watching Gabby Garcia fight the old pro wrestlers. And I'm also another hypocrite in saying that I don't like the way martial arts has turned into a sport and then into a entertainment now, like the UFC is now. But I do love how popular. I mean, don't you, Chris? Don't you love seeing how big the sport that we helped start being as huge as it is today? Going to Las Vegas, and when you see Celine Dion's picture, Lionel Richie, but now you're seeing MMA fighters on the billboards in Vegas. I mean, isn't that a fucking rush to know that you was actually a part of that?
I remember when it was first on like ESPN, you're like, oh, they just said something on ESPN about the UFC. It was just like, Can you believe it? Like that was never thought of.
Exactly. ESPN.
Like, are you kidding? I mean, people used to, when you said you fought in the cage, they looked at you like you said you ate babies for breakfast. It was like, oh, you know, and they get on the other side of the road, didn't want to even talk to you. Like you were, now it's an accepted sport. I mean, that wasn't the case at all forever, man. So it's hard to believe that it's changed in this amount of time. And it hasn't been that long, really. I mean, we were still doing, you know, we're not that old, so it's crazy.
It's unreal. Yeah.
I love it.
So I mean, and we've gone way past our time allotment here.
I feel bad. We've taken too much.
I don't know. I mean, you're probably got to pee because you're sitting in your car.
I appreciate all your time.
No, you guys lucky I have a very understanding wife sitting down.
You're not kidding. Thank you for that. Appreciate it.
So I'm going to close with your question about your brother Egan, who I think, in my opinion, there needs to be more of him out there. I mean, you do very well with your social media and your videos. Egan is one of the best racquetball players at one time in the world.
Crazy.
Dude, toughest racquetball players in the world, the Inoue family, for sure.
Without a doubt.
For sure. So in his natural progression within the sport, he starts a company called E-Force Racquetball Company, which I believe he sold and he did really well. But I think one of the original owners he had an issue with, and in traditional Inoue dealings, it did not involve lawyers. Do you like that setup, Chris? Chris, is that pretty good?
I love it.
Okay, so go ahead. Go ahead, Enson.
Yeah, E-Force, Egan created E-Force. He was Egan's incredible because whatever sports he decides to take, he goes balls out and he does well. He was the #1 racquetball player in the world. He actually became one of the top free divers in Japan. He was about to get scholarship in swimming. I mean, the guy is he takes up the art and just goes crazy on it. Jiu-jitsu, he's won I think the purple belt world championship, and I think the blue belt and purple belt, he won the world championship. Maybe the first non-Brazilian to win any type of world championship. Yeah. And I think he just didn't have the right agreement with his name was Cecil Abao, one of his partners, Cecil, and they decided to part ways. You know, the thing is I don't know what you heard, but Egan is a whole different animal from me. He's the type that will avoid violence. He would try and talk it over. And I from what I believe, that incident actually didn't really turn out that bad. He just had a disagreement and he didn't like the way the guy was doing things, and they ended up, splitting the company.
That's it.
Yeah, that's it. Unfortunately, not exciting. If it was me, it'd probably be a little more exciting, but no, it was it was Egan, and he's like you have the two brothers, the bad brother and the good brother. I would be considered like the crazy bad brother, and Egan was the guy in school was always the class president, honor roll, and I was like, the bully of the school, the teacher, parent-teacher conferences.
Voted for him. You were making sure he ran for president. You made sure they voted.
If I got elected into any type of office, it was sergeant in arms.
There you go.
I love it.
Awesome. Chris?
Well, hey, brother, I mean, I really appreciate all your time. Thank you for taking it out with us. Thank your wife. Really appreciate that. If you ever want to come, thank you. If you ever want to come to a bare knuckle fight, we put them on the BKFC. Let me know. I'll get you tickets, man. I appreciate it.
Oh, if I were in town, I do want to watch that, man. That's something that if I was in my heyday, I would have loved to do. I'm kind of glad I'm not, because I watch it from the fans.
I came out of retirement for 3 of those fights. I had to try it, and I loved it. But now I just do the commentary for it, man, because it's fun. But man, it's not any easier when you get older to train. You know what I mean? So
yeah, I hear you, man. I hear you, man.
Chris had to be the best man at a wedding, I think, with his eyes all banged up after one of those.
That was a different one. That was a different fight. That was an MMA. That was after I fought Joe Riggs. That was not good. That was all cut up.
Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Hey, thank you so much. Definitely an honor. Thank you, Enson.
Absolutely,
guys.
Enson's got a podcast. Enson,
Yeah,
I think we owe you one, and I'm volunteering Chris Lytle. I think Chris Lytle needs to make an appearance on your podcast.
Go ahead and give a shout out to your podcast. What is it? What's it called?
It's the Yamato Damashi podcast.
Okay. Cool.
Hey, can I end with one more question?
Go ahead.
Because Yamato Damashi is like, it's sort of like, it's hard to translate, but it's sort of like the soul of Japan. It's like, you know, and I think this is not a nickname. Like, how did you earn that nickname? Because they don't just give it away to anybody. Who gave it to you?
One of the top reporters, MMA reporters here in Japan, Yamato Damashi, back in Japan, back in the old school. Nowadays they say Nihon, but back in the day it was called Yamato. So Yamato stands for Japan, and Tamashi stands for spirit. So it's the spirit of Japan.
Nice.
And back in the day when it was allowed to, it was called Yamato. It was back in the, the Edo period, where it was all samurais.
Mm-hmm.
So the Japanese people represented as a samurai spirit. So I was, one of the reporters told me that, hey, when we see you fight and see what you say in your interviews, one word popped into mind is Yamato Damashi. And I didn't know what it meant. I looked it up and I was like, oh, wow, that's pretty cool. I didn't know the depth of the name until I really, started fighting under the name and more people started talking to me about it, and the depth of it's funny because of the name that they gave me that I represent, it became where Yamato Damashi represented my life, where I have a guide in my life now to live the way of Yamato Damashi, which is do what's right, no matter what the consequences. If it's the right thing to do it,
That's awesome.
I
knew there had to be a story because there's nothing I could do on the planet that they would give me that nickname. There's nothing I could do. You need to earn that nickname, and you did. You've done it honor. So thank you.
Miguel, you drank a lot of Miller Lite. You'd have gotten a different nickname. Maybe smoked a lot of weed.
Yamato Damashi drinking beer.
Yeah.
But thank you very much, Enson. Thank you very much for all all the stories and everything.
Absolute legend. You're an absolute legend and truly an honor to share this time with you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you guys, man.
Well, Mike, Enson Inoue is in the books, and I'm not the guy who usually toot our own horn, but we did a phenomenal job.
Yeah, when Chris Lytle calls you up after the podcast, saying, holy shit, that was amazing. And then the next morning still yelling about how good it was. I know we, as a group did really well. However, there's people that help us out. Like when Miguel and I were doing our research, there's people that kind of come to the forefront and kind of ante up information that literally saves us hours of research if we're even able to find it. Todd Atkins, he's got a podcast. He does a lot of old school interviews like us. It's definitely a different format, but he does his due diligence, and his knowledge of the Japanese MMA world is second to none. He really helped us out with a lot of the information. Like a lot of those questions that I had for Inoue came directly from him. So, greatly appreciated. Todd, please check his podcast out. Other people that have really helped out, Crowbar, dude, this guy's posting on a couple of message boards in regards to ourselves. He's doing a phenomenal job. Genghis Conrad is helping us with our times. Anybody, if you guys know how to work Instagram better than us, which, is not a really high bar to jump over, please help us out. TikTok as well. We've got, we're old and crusty and we don't know any of this stuff. So by liking, sharing, and subscribing, it does help us. Miguel gets my dates. April 8th, Bourbon Street on the south side of Chicago, 115th and Kedzie. I'll be hosting Ignite FC's MMA event there. I'm also hosting Abu Dhabi Jiu-Jitsu Pro, April 16th in Tampa, Florida. So I got a lot going on in April. And there's a bunch more dates that we're going to announce. So I'm going to be kind of bouncing all over the Midwest and Florida for a while.
Cool. Yeah, just to wrap it up, like I said, not to toot our own horn, but look, the bottom line is we got 2.5 hours with Enson Inoue. Enson's a guy that has his own podcast as well. He has a social media presence and stuff, but he had fun doing our podcast. That's why it lasted so long. He stopped. He was in his car, chilling out, and him and Chris connected, with fight talk and stuff like that, and it worked out real well. I'd be a fan for those parts of the podcast as well, just listen. So
Yeah. So Miguel, when we had lined this interview up, there was a couple of kind of near misses and hits, and the time difference between us and Japan isn't always easy to kind of figure out between everybody. So he told us he was going to be driving to the store and he'll do his interview on the way to the store. So I'm like, Enson, our interviews, they're not real short. And he said, yeah, but the store's like an hour away. And rather than me kind of saying, yeah, we're going to need more than an hour, I'm like, man, let's just see what happens. If we got to do part 2, we do part 2. And
I figured an hour. That in Tokyo, that means an hour and a half.
Okay, I know nothing.
And then after that, he sends his wife in the store, and we got an hour and a half back. So I thought we would be okay, but he did. I think he stopped outside of the store and finished the interview 2.5 hours later. And I credit that to Chris and the report of the podcast with him. I think he was just having fun, and that's our bread and butter. I think the guys have fun on this podcast, and you don't get that anywhere else.
No, you don't. And I will say, like, in between reading the questions, kind of, maneuvering the conversations around, I'm also like looking over his head, waiting for the car to stop. So I knew when he was in front of the store. So like I'd have my like heavy hitter questions ready to go to kind of be on the out. But he had his poor wife sitting in the car with him for at least 45 minutes to an hour for sure.
Hey, that's a threshold, okay? Any fighter out there about to come on the podcast, hey, if your wife has to sit in the car with you for an hour or two, so be it. And Inoue's wife did it.
During the Steve Berger interview, Steve had to go into the closet and his wife was yelling at him because we were going so long.
There are a couple of guys, I think Gilbert Iville too, because he was I think Gilbert was late. Like we had him late at night, and he also had like a nice regime where he was trying to get to sleep early and stuff. And you could see him shooing off his family to finish the interview. Like it wasn't a question of I got to wrap up or anything. He was just like, go away.
Yeah.
So rapport, guys, we're there. We're doing good.
Well, you know who else? Pedro Hizzo.
Yeah, exactly. That's another
Pedro Hizzo telling his kids to be quiet. He's busy.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, kids, the family, it's all right. A little suffering for the sake of the podcast. It's not like we're calling the fighters asking them for money. Maybe just a little suffering for the family. Like 2 hours of their time. So
excellent. Ladies and gentlemen,
guys.
Like, share, subscribe. It really, really helps us out. And it's greatly appreciated, all the support that we've been getting. Thank you.
Check out the full interview on iTunes, Spotify, and all major podcast platforms.